All right. Shalom. May the words of my mouth and the meditation of my heart be acceptable in Yahweh's sight. He is our strength and our redeemer. And it is in his name, which is his authority, that we pray, praise, proclaim, project, and protect today's message. Amen. Matter of fact, Shabbat Shalom. Shabbat Shalom. How are you guys doing? It is Shabbat Shalom because even though it's not the seventh day, it is September the 25th. And it being thus, today is our Feast of Trumpets. Hopefully you guys will be joining us on Zoom, 2 o'clock p.m. Eastern, New York time. Thanks for being on, everybody. Once again, as always, it's Pastor Kofi, Pastor Servant to Christ, where we are always changing lives one mind at a time, but being a voice of the voiceless and speaking the unspoken. Thanks for spending some time with us today. And hopefully you're able to gain a little something from today. And thanks for being on with us. Hold on as I make sure our setup is all the way live, I guess. I think we're doing all right here. Let me see. Okay, I think we'll be straight. So thanks again for everybody for being on. We give all praise and honor once again to the Most High. We give all praise and honor to Him. For my wife, the Honorable Alma, who lives a life that's able to be honored. You can check her out on TikTok, YouTube, her website, and Pinterest at Bloom and Flourish. Not A&D, the letter N, Bloom and Flourish. She is a healer, herbalist, chemist, and biologist by degree. And the thanks for the month is still I Am Rested. We're getting close to the end of this month. And we're grateful and thankful for everything that's going on, for everything that's happening. We're thankful and grateful for everything that's all the moves and everything that are going on in your lives, how you're getting better. And today we're going to talk about something. We're going to label this today truth in pieces. We get the truth in pieces. We've gotten lies in pieces, so we might as well get the truth in pieces. A lot of people don't know, right? Because lies are based on some truth. So they gave you a little bit of truth, right? And then piece together a bunch of lies to make it look something different, right? And so now we want to go back and see a little bit of truth, get rid of the lies, and start to put some truth pieces where they put those lies. But before we go a little deeper, let's go ahead and say hello, everybody. How you doing, Big Brother Thomas? How you doing, Sister Rhonda? How are you doing, Sister Deborah? Sister Cynthia? Alchemy, God, it's okay. How you doing? Is it Anaya? Is it Ania just or is it Anaya just? I'm not sure. I apologize. I don't know how to pronounce it. Thanks for being on with us, still Grand Rising to you. Hello, Jackie McMurray. Vincent, how you doing? Crystal Walls. Like the one you said, yes, you've been around. Stuff like that, and you want nothing but the truth. Yeah, exactly. That's what we're trying to do, is be informed. How you doing, Mayhew? Cousin Tim. Hello. Bounty. If I missed a name, please forgive me. Charge it to my head, not to my heart. I don't mean to miss anybody or be offensive to anybody. Although we are going to say some stuff that people will probably be easily offended by. Hey, how you doing, Sister Mary? And hello to you. Hello to Moselle. Hello to Jimmy, if he's listening. Thank you to everybody. Okay, Australia in the house. Okay, awesome. Glad to have you with us. Thank you for being on. And thank you to everybody who's watching this, whether you're watching this live or watching this later on. How you doing? Thank you, Miriam, for sharing, and thanks for being on. How you doing, Aphrodisiac, servant of Yahweh, or servant of Yahweh? Thanks for being on. Thank you, everybody. We appreciate it. So, the truth in pieces. The truth in pieces. We praise Yah while being down here. Our meetup turned into a little bit of a baptism yesterday, so we got to do a little bit of baptism yesterday for some people. So that was exciting and grateful. You can hear that we were out a little bit in my voice, a little tired and stuff. Thank you for those who got up with us as usual, 6 a.m., who've been faithful to that as we've been trying to do our little workout on Zoom and stuff like that together to get back things. Have I ever been to Africa? Of course. As my family from Africa, of course, not just people that I don't know about, but I actually know my bloodline. So yeah, I've been to a lot of places where my people are from, whether it be here as far as Cherokee land, or even what I'm married into as far as Seminole and Blackfoot land, my cousin's land as far as Choctaw land, because that's the original American. If you know that there is the original definition, you can look it up in Black's Law Dictionary, which is something you can still use in court today. Not black as in the color black, but the guy's last name was Black, right? And in Black's Law Dictionary, it literally says that the original American was considered to be a copper colored person indigenous to the Americas. So I know that part of me. I know the North African part of me as far as Yashtel. I know the Northeast part of me as far as if you want to go to Kemet. I know the West African part of myself. I've been there as well. I know about that as far as Shri, or what you might call one of the tribes in modern Ghana today. So yes, so I'm very aware of who I am. And thank you for the question. And I think all of us, even if we haven't been there, we should at least go there as far as our culture, because everything starts with culture. You know, it's like a lot of people who say you're Irish American. Have you ever been to Ireland? If not, just stop talking about it, because a lot of Irish don't like a lot of things that Irish people say. Fred, why do you have a problem with me? Let's ask that question. Why do you have a problem with me? Are you all right today? Have you come to show love, or have you come to be offensive? Because I've come to show love, and I don't want to be offensive towards you. However, the subject matter might be a little much for you today if you're already frustrated just by my mere appearance and me saying the word truth. If that's where we are already, we're going to have a problem, sir. But thank you for being on. If that was to rattle my cage, I don't know, whatever, to disprove whatever you feel like I'm going to say, you might want to stick around and see if we agree. Well, I haven't said much, right? But your first question, see, and this is why we have the truth in pieces. You know, that's what we're talking about today, the truth in pieces, because the reality is that you got a piece of information, and have you ever been back to Africa? I didn't say anything about Africa today. So why did you even ask the question? You said you're trying to understand what I'm saying. No, you said like you don't have a problem with that. There's the truth, you know, this and that, whatever, right? Then the next thing is like, why do you talk so fast? Why not? Do you comprehend what I'm saying? Is it too fast? If so, I can slow down, right? But we're talking about the truth in pieces. You're already verifying that we have people that take pieces of things and move too fast, right? So yes, I do know who I am, and I spoke on all those things to get it out the way before we get into a whole thing that's not necessary. Because this is not necessary. Loving each other is, and learning about things. Because the more we learn about a piece of something that's missing, then the more whole we become. That's what even the word called holy is. It's literally saying that we are whole. We're whole, right? We're trying to become whole in everything that we're doing. There are pieces missing. Hey, how you doing, Sister Austria? There's pieces missing, and we're trying to get back whole. So we're trying to get the truth in pieces, since pieces have either been taken away from, or truth is missing. For example, and we're going to talk about missing pieces. Why is even conversation as far as racism or whatever even a thing? Am I a pagan? No. First of all, if you're going to say am I a pagan, I guess you would say do I have a pagan belief system? Because I can't be a pagan person by definition, because it's not in my bloodline. But do I share pagan beliefs? No. Do I hate somebody who has pagan beliefs? No. You know, so when we talk about the stuff, truth in pieces, you know, let's even when we talk about racism, for example, because that seems to be where the assumption was that I was going to have to talk about racism. Even in that, right, both by social construct, white people and black people and anybody in between had to be taught that race was not a competition, but that race was a competition based off of classism, based off of skin color. Not only black people had to be trained wrong, right? White people had to be trained wrong. Both black people, white people, both had to be trained wrong. That's a piece. That's a missing piece. So when we had this argument, what's the argument always between? Well, you know, my ancestors, even if my ancestors did things, I'm not my ancestors. Not every white person was bad, blah, blah, whatever. Like that's correct. The missing piece is that those who even did wrong, or those who stood by and let wrong happen, or those who felt powerless to do anything about it, or even those who died for, you know, for humanity, for a black person, even if they happen to be white or whatever. Those things were constructed. Those people came out of a construction. That's a missing piece. How you doing, Brother Jermaine? How you doing, Brother Nye? That's a missing piece. See, the truth is in pieces. And if we would stop denying that there are pieces missing and we would start looking at what's the gap, right? And instead of theorizing what's in between and actually having a conversation, we'd be able to get to some truth. The truth of the matter is that you can't talk about being like, watch this. Let's deal with some words today. Let's do some wordplay as we should, some etymology as we should, right? If I were to say to you, what is the definition of a racist? Right? If I were to ask, I'm going to ask you all, put in the chat for me today. What is the definition of a racist? If you do want to call in or whatever, just make sure you let me know in the chat so I can be prepared for you. If I don't know who's calling in, I'm not just going to let random people in today. I rarely do anyways. What is the, and we're going to talk about this. What is the definition of a racist? Do we even know? You said our minds change with more information. Okay. You said read meets your straw man. Yeah, we know about the straw man. We teach on sovereignty and things of that nature here. That's great. But once again, what is the definition? Thanks for being part of the community, Queen Decode. I don't know how to pronounce that. Dita Tiak. I'm not sure if I said that. Am I a Moor? Yes, by definition, I'm a Moor, right? As are many, right? Well, once again, what is, if we were to ask the average person, what is the definition of a racist? What would you say? A person with power who uses so-called uses it to discriminate, which if we were to take that, really that would be talking about a person of color or a person of a particular color who comes against somebody else. You said someone who hates someone based on race would be your guess. Okay, watch this. Prejudice or antagonist toward a people. Okay, that's the first place we go. You said to view others' race before judging a person's character. Okay, so that's prejudice, but we could say that that's what we think of as far as being racist as well, right? To discriminate over appearance. Okay. If I were to, now watch this. See, words, right? Let's use the words, right? If I were to say, and don't be, right? Like if I were to say somebody is a flautist, I don't know how many people know, that's someone who plays the flute, right? So if I were to say somebody is a flautist, what would you say that is? See, we're gonna shift the paradigm. We're gonna get back on track with these words. See, because even in the words, we got to get truth. The pieces are out there, but somebody has taught you to take off certain pieces or take away certain things that were fine, define them, which means break down what was fine, and then redefine them so much that you can't even keep up with it, right? So, what is a flautist? Well, a flautist is not just a musician. A flautist is someone proficient at playing the flute. Okay, but let's keep it in music. What is a tubist? I used to be a tubist. I used to get paid to be a tubist, right? That used to be what I did for a living at one point. So what is a tubist? A tubist is somebody who is proficient at playing the tuba. What is a pianist? Somebody who comes on here and asks that exact question, Freckle, I would guess that would be you, right? Because you have no clue what I'm talking about. You can take that ad hominem somewhere else. That just shows that you don't have the ability to have an actual conversation, right? Or you're just a troll, right? So what is a well, when I say we're going to talk about proficient. I'm somebody, so as a tubist, I'm somebody who can play the tuba. I know how to use the tuning slides. I'm somebody who knows how to be able to play not just 1-2 octaves, but I can play 4 to 5 and have pretty great sound. I'm somebody who can play the tuba as far as play it jazz. I can play it as far as I can do bass lines on it. I can do big band type stuff. I can do rebirth type stuff. I can do Louisiana type feel. I can do marching band type feel. I can play the saxophone. I can play not only the saxophone, but the B flat tuba, the C tuba, the F tuba, the E flat tuba, etc. Right? Proficient as far as I don't just say that I play it, touch it, whatever, but I actually have the ability to read the music, play things, play by ear, play in tune, play in an orchestra, play in a brass quintet, et cetera, right? That's proficiency, right? I'm proficient. You see what I'm saying? When you play the flute or whatever, can you hold a tune? Can you play a piccolo? Can you play the flute? Can you do this? Can you do that? Right? Can you move to certain things, etc. Right? Like you become proficient, right? And playing it. All right. A flautist is proficient in playing the flute, not just somebody who can pick it up, right? Or even we could say more than proficient, but let's just say proficient, right? A pianist, proficient, knows their keys, knows all 88 keys, can play different types of keys, by the way, because there's a difference even between a pianist. So you could be a keyboardist. A keyboardist can play a piano, can play different types of keyboards, can play keyboards with one set of keys, can play keyboards that are here. They can blow into keys and be able to play, an instrument where they're actually blowing sound in to be able to make the air. They can be able to play things online, like I can play piano on my phone or on an iPad and be able to come up with a beat or something like that, right? We're talking about a proficient, right? So if somebody's a flautist, they're proficient in the flute. If somebody's a pianist, they're proficient on the piano. If somebody's a tubist, they're proficient on the tuba, right? If somebody's a saxophonist, they are somebody proficient in the saxophone. If somebody is a whatever, like the IST, I hope you're getting it, just saying whatever that person does, they're proficient in, right? So if somebody's a racist, now let's turn it back, right? If somebody is a racist, if you're going to use that term, then what is the race that they're proficient in? See, are you talking social construct? Are you talking about competition? Are you talking about the human race? See, somebody who's a racist could be proficient in the human race, but that's not what we mean, right? If anything, if you want to be a racist, be proficient in the human race, right? If somebody's a racist, at least be proficient in your race, which means you should treat other people well because you want people to treat your race, social construct, well, right? But most people are racist as far as they're into competition and using whatever they can to win the competition. Eventually, that became what we call colorism, and schisms, and classism. Right. So now that stuff is seeped in, and how you doing, Sister Barbara? How you doing, Minister Select Shantae? How you doing, T? Always, right? So now we came in there. Now what's happened is that racism has changed, right? Now what is so IST means I'm proficient in it. If I'm an antagonist, I'm proficient at what? At being the bad person, right? So to speak. If I'm a protagonist, I'm proficient at what? Being the person who's the hero or whatever, right? Proficient in. But now let's change that IST. How you doing, babe? My wife is on, the Honorable Alma. Once again, follow on TikTok, YouTube, website, and Pinterest at Bloom and Flourish. So if I'm in the end, I'm sorry, if I'm now go from racist IST to racism ISM. Now, what does ISM means? ISM means that you are what? You are talking about a system now. So if you have a racist that's proficient in race concerning racism, see, even the pieces of the words, they give us a little story, they give us a little truth. Now we're talking about something where you got to have a different context, we got to have a different conversation. How you doing, Judah? We got to have a different cultural conversation. And by the way, Shabbat Shalom to everybody. Not only a belated Shabbat Shalom, but today is a Shabbat for many of us, because today is a day for many of us that's the Feast of Trumpets. Those of you who will be on with us later, we can't wait to celebrate with you. Those who celebrate on your own, celebrate on your own. Have a great day. Right? So we're talking about truth in pieces. And people are talking about, and somebody came on literally today ready to tell me everything before I even had talked about Africa or whatever, and automatically saw what I was wearing, saw that I had a lion behind me, and their first question is, have you ever been back to Africa? Because you saw a piece of something, but there's some missing pieces to it before you make it a context, an assumption of where you're going to win an argument. Like, before you go ad hominem, before you use something as a straw man to really just gaslight. Maybe we should take time out to comprehend what's going on. How you doing, T? Always, if I didn't say so already, I think I did. But so now we got to get to the truth in pieces. What are some of these missing truths? What are some of these missing truths? People say America's going to hell. Okay, well, what are the pieces that are missing that would cause America to be in heaven? Because, as far as this modern America, was it ever a heavenly situation for everybody? Take black or white out of the equation, right? Matter of fact, take black out the equation, because we weren't considered to be human beings when the Constitution, what we now call the Constitution today, take black or white out of the equation, right? So black slaves were considered to be people. Women didn't have rights, so we would put them to the side. But a lot of white social construct, white men, didn't have power either. How many people could vote when the Constitution, at least what we call this modern Constitution, how many people could vote when that came out? See, I want you to see, like, they had to do damage to everybody. They had to omit certain things from everybody. How many people could vote? Anybody know? Have a guess? Percentage wise? Probably like 5 to 10%. You're in there. It's in that ballpark. You're right. 6%. And did they vote as far as they got to vote where nobody could see them and there was no pressure? Or did they have to, or were they kind of forced into voting? Yeah, 6%. Like I said, at that time, you have to not count black men. You have to not count black people. You have to not count white women because women didn't have the right to do that. So even in that, the vote really was controlled by an even smaller amount because this is how the vote went. See, those of you who still vote, you're used to going to a voting booth of some kind. They're going to have something where nobody can see your information. You feel like you're not pressured into anything. A lot of people won't even say who they voted for. That's not what's going on. I'm sorry. So you had a question. When did ethnic color change? If it was only one color, Noah's sons one color. Well, we're not 100% sure that Noah's sons were one color. Matter of fact, if we're talking about either the Chronicles of Noah or the Book of Enoch, Noah, more than likely, even if he's not completely so, he's dealing with some form of albinoism. And so more than likely, that means, Yavat, or who we would call, some people say Yavate, or who we call Japheth. He more than likely, likely was an albino himself too, or had some kind of albinoism. Does that mean he was white looking? No, but when you look at how he's described, it talks about him being bright. Remember, the color white doesn't exist until later on in history because white always meant bright or clear or see-through, right? So when Noah is born, it said that he had body parts in his skin. Something was off with it to where it looked like it was, devoid of melanin. So Noah himself is dealing with albinoism. His wife is not. Two of his sons are not. Ham, his little name is Hot, saying that he could deal in the heat and look at his sons, Cush, Kemet, Put, Canaan, right? So his, Ham himself and his sons don't have that issue. You look at, and now, by the way, that's scientific. Like if you look, especially with a lot of African tribes, if they have albino children, usually 1 out of 3 of them, especially with boys, 1 out of 3 of them is going to be deal with albinoism. Sometimes it's the third son. A lot of times it's the first son, but you're dealing with a whole different thing. So as far as that, you already had some of that going on. And remember, they were surprised by it. So whatever Noah's condition was, either they had never seen it before, he's the first person to deal with it, or they had never, what is it? Or basically it was so rare that they never heard of it. But they had to go ask, they went and asked, their granddaddy. And, was it the daddy or the granddaddy? Was it Lamed or Lamech? Was it Lamech or was it Methuselah? It's one of those two. But they ran and asked one of them. And I don't think it was Methuselah. It might have been even his great grandfather. Maybe it was Methuselah's daddy. I can't remember that part of it. Looked that part up, but they went and they asked somebody particular, like, yo, what is going on with this? And Noah basically was, and they said, love him, take care of him. Like, so, because they were afraid. They'd never seen anything like that before. So even if you're going to talk about color in that regard, it's, that's probably the first time if you want to talk about, but even still, they didn't look at him as being a different race back then. But color probably existed as far as different color people and different shades of people. You probably had that almost from the beginning. It doesn't really mention it because, in that regard, it doesn't matter as much. But, for people to be different colors or different hue or different whatever, that's something that's always been in nature. So, but if we're talking about looking specifically to be like, when did we say somebody was black or white or yellow or red or whatever colors people use, I guess we say that's the first time that we see a big deal made out of it as far as that much difference in between the two. Oh, it was Enoch. Okay, thank you. Yeah, they asked Enoch. Also, too, oh, you know what I'm thinking about? Methuselah's name means arrow. So Methuselah actually points towards Noah. My bad. I'm sorry. I'm doing a name thing. Sorry. You're absolutely right. Because then Methuselah, what happens? So Methuselah basically is like means like almost like a spear or arrow, somebody pointing towards. Um, and what Methuselah does, if you look at the timeline, Methuselah would have been old enough to be around when Adam actually was still alive, and then Adam would have died around the time of Methuselah. So Methuselah and Adam would have had conversation. Then Methuselah is actually, if you look at how long he lives, he's probably around right until the day of the flood or something like that, where he either passes away during the flood or he just lives up to the flood. We don't know. It doesn't say. And so therefore Methuselah is like kind of the really important because he's in between Adam, so to speak, and gives us up to the flood or whatever, so that Noah would have been able to hear literally, one generation. And when I say one generation, obviously Methuselah's not born right after. Methuselah's not born right after Seth or Canaan or et cetera, et cetera. But Methuselah, one generation as far as the telephone game. Adam was able to tell Methuselah this is what happened. Methuselah was able to tell Noah this is what happened type thing. So I'm sorry, you're absolutely right about that. I be messing with that. That messes with my head sometimes. Right? Hence the joke here, older than Methuselah. Yeah. But race, as far as us making it black, white, etc., that's something that I guess, like, if you're looking for something in particular, Noah's probably the first person we can point to and be like, oh, he's that much different as far as what we're told. Like I said, it could have been stuff with other people that were around the earth, but it was something that hadn't been discussed or seen with them or whatever, right? But they were afraid when they saw his appearance. They were afraid when they saw his appearance and what he looked like, right? And when you read the Chronicles of Noah, you'll also see that some other people were even involved in the conversation. And but basically everybody was like, he's a human being. Love on him. He's a human being. Why would you treat him any different? So even in that, we see, like, because there'll be some people now, well, what about Yakub and this evil person who created white people and all this stuff? And it's like, well, even if you believe in that, like, well, I mean, I won't say even if you do, I guess you're going to automatically believe that it's an evil creation. But as far as our culture is concerned, when you see that, you'll see that even in that missing piece that we don't bring up, like, still love them, right? Still love them. That's still your family. That's still your human family, right? We all ultimately come from the same place. That's still your family. How you doing, Big Idol? Thanks for being part of the community. I don't know if I said that right, Big Ital or Big Ital. I'm not sure. And thanks for being part of the community. So that's something that happens. So when somebody comes on and their immediate response to seeing me, and they go to the place that they went to, oh, have you ever been to Africa? Even if I hadn't, even if I didn't know any of my family over there, even if I wasn't still talking to them, even if we weren't helping people over there with food and things of that nature, even if we weren't able to travel over there ever, even if we weren't going to go back, because at some point we plan on getting some land over there once we finally get this stuff going over here, even if it wasn't, what does that matter? Especially before I open my mouth. But you can see that was a piece. See, and a lot of people will tell the truth about themselves in pieces. Truth be told. A lot of people will tell the truth about themselves in pieces, truth be told. See, a piece flew out of that person's mouth. Have you ever been to Africa? I ain't even said nothing about Africa yet. I haven't even said what we're going to talk about yet. You should have waited till I got to some of the other stuff. Then you could have been able to be frustrated. You probably would get frustrated about where we headed, right? But that's what I told him, man, like Dave Chappelle be saying, like, man up. Woman up. Like, if you can't handle the fact that I look this way, you're gonna have problems getting some truth. But remember, we talked about that. Truth separates. Luke chapter 12, verse 51. Yahshua himself says, hey, do you think I came that everybody would get along? He said, no, I'm going to give you the truth. And when I give you the truth, it's going to cause mother to be against daughter and father to be against son and mother-in-law against daughter-in-law and father-in-law against son-in-law. And one of the hardest things, and I'll be honest, one of the toughest things, this is why I've had to forgive myself and not condemn myself for telling the truth, because you will watch people be messed up. You will watch families get messed up. You will watch friendships be lost. I've lost friends. I've lost family. I've lost contact with certain people. I've had to learn, and I'm still learning. I'm getting better. I'm having my healing moments and stuff. There's a lot of stuff recently that's been coming up and coming out of me because you tell truth about something, you live a certain way, and you're going to be ostracized, because to live by truth, unfortunately, is to live differently. Right? To live by truth, unfortunately, is to what? To live by truth is to do what? Is to live differently. Because a lot of people don't live by truth. Hello, how you doing? Is it? I don't know how to pronounce it. Is it Empyrean? I'm not sure. Empyrean. Thanks for being part of the community, or being on with us today. Hello, Sex and Spirit. All right. Thanks for being part of the community. All right. So truth is going to separate. Truth is going to separate, and people are not ready for truth. Right? People are not ready for truth, and you got to be ready for that. That you're going to say some things, right? Like, we're going to dig into this book right here a little bit. Let me make sure I mirror this for y'all. Right? But we're going to get into this a little bit today. And this right here is offensive to a lot, because this is truth. Like, this has stuff that you can't debate. Right? We're going to use this a little bit today just to show you how there's pieces missing. And you can't be holy unless you whole. You can't say that you holy unless you're whole. WHOLY. That's what holy really means. I know they taught you it's only set apart, but that's a piece. You should be set apart. I know they taught you to be, anointed. That's a piece, right? I know they taught you this thing, but you can't be holy if you're not whole. And so we're gonna go over this a little bit today, right? A great book, valuable book. Right. And I'm just going to use it for pictures. There's so much more in this than what I'm going to talk about today. But I'm telling you, just showing this book, just talking about this, when we get into it, people are going to get frustrated and upset. And even in the Native community, it makes a lot of people upset, because you have the blood quantum stuff. And people don't want to hear that, hey, Africa and Turtle Island have had discussions, and people living back and forth and trading for years and years and years. You said your brother was a liar. You had to separate. Sometimes you do, So when you operate in this, truth comes in pieces. Okay, I'll put it up for 10 more seconds. Y'all got 10 seconds. Okay, we're gonna come back to it anyways, right? But you got 10 more seconds, right? But truth separates. And when you tell the truth, when you say, like for a lot of people who are still, like, think about how many people know Christopher Columbus did not discover America, because you had 1493, the doctrine of discovery, based off of something in 1452, where the Pope said that if you find land and there's not a white Christian male on there, then it means that land has no human life on it. Therefore, you discovered it, right? So Columbus, he came over in 1492. He was allowed to come over by the Pope, who allowed Queen Isabel to send him in 1491. He sailed in 1492. He came back, and when they discovered that there was actually some stuff over there that they could go ahead and take over, some slaves, and the Pope was given some slaves, then he gave the doctrine of discovery, 1493, something they were using since 1452, but didn't make it official to 1493, to say specifically, hey, if you're not a white Christian man, if you go to a place without a white Christian man on it, you've discovered it. Right? And you did it in the name of Jesus, which really was in the name of your Pope. Right? But when you see something like this, a lot of people get upset, because even a lot of natives who will go to, and no offense, no shade, right? We're just having conversation. This is a safe space. I'm not trying to say you're an evil person, bad and blah, blah, but that blood quantum thing hits us when you see something like this, because wait a minute, I could see myself in something like this. If somebody came before Columbus and they look like me, then that means I have to stop looking at his story and figure out my story, or our story, or even the story. His story doesn't make sense. You said put it in schools. Yeah, I'm not even worried about schools. Some people still do. I don't think schools are really as much of a benefit. Schools help you to become a greater laborer. I don't know about that. I think that's a piece of something missing as well. When you said the eternal light came from nothing, of nothing, but it's shall illuminate your spirit forever. All right, excellent. You said make a history book. Your babies need to hear this. You know what? That's not a bad a history book for children. That's not a bad idea. That's not even that. That might not even be that difficult to do. You have to figure that out, children-wise. We'd have to have some pictures and stuff in there. Yeah, I homeschool my children as well. Thank you for the love. Appreciate it. And by the way, don't forget, those of you who are with us, we're going to have we got our holy day today, the Feast of Trumpets. So if you're going to join us for that, that's on Zoom, 2:00 p.m. Eastern New York time. Don't forget, if we have your email address and everything already, we had already sent it to you. I'm on the Google Calendar invite. And by the way, please check it. We had somebody who we met up with yesterday, and they said they've been missing a lot of stuff because it's been put in the non-spam. And I think it's because we've grown so much now that we send so many emails that some of your stuff might automatically put it in spam. So if you do get if you haven't gotten an email or whatever, just double check that for me. If not, make sure you get back to us before 2. I say probably 1:45 at the latest, because if you get to me any later than that, I'm probably not going to be able to make sure that we get you the link. Or you can always text us at our number, right? And if you're joining us on TikTok, if you're interested in any of the stuff that we do, school stuff, as far as our when I say school stuff, as far as like SOC University classes like Black History, Sovereignty 1, Sovereignty 2, marriage classes, Solution from the Black Perspective, Herbalism 2, discipleship, natural medicine 1. What else is going on this semester? So many classes. Oh, Hebrew characters, all that stuff. If you want to learn some of these things, let us know. You said no way of knowing what happened pre-Sumerian texts between civilizations without writing. Yeah, there is. Yeah, there is, because there's a lot of stuff that isn't written that we go by today. If you believe in the Big Bang, you believe in something that was not even written and then got written later on, and don't even know that it was written down by people that came from Greece. Because first the Greeks, said the Big Bang was Gaia. And now later on, you just took Gaia out the story and you said it's the Big Bang. The Greeks said there were atoms that are the smallest things that happen. Eventually, you saw some atoms, or what you call atoms now, and you said, okay, these protons and electrons, because neutrons are still just a theory. We don't even know if neutrons exist. We just say for every proton and electron, since we can't figure out sometimes when they explode where the energy goes, since energy always has turned to mass and mass has turned to energy, we just say that they have to go to a neutral place as a theory. And then we made up neutrinos to make up that for neutrons, and we don't know. So people do that all the time without evidence, without proper scientific notion, without notation, without even being able to make sure that there's controls. And even how do you even make an explosion on the scale of the Big Bang to be able to test and see? And then you'd have to make an explosion on the scale of the Big Bang 7, 8, 9, 10 times to be able to see, do you get the same thing that happens every time? If something happens different every time, then even if you believe in the Big Bang, a Big Bang may not necessarily be responsible for why you're here. So it's a lot of stuff, once again, missing in the pieces. There's stuff missing in the pieces. We're told certain things. How you doing, Sister Helen? We're told certain things, but we're dealing with the pieces. How you doing, Brother Clem? So we get truth in pieces. You said, no, you mean pre-Sumerian civilizations in Africa and Turtle Island could have interacted and not recorded. Well, not only that, but we have evidence as far as we know what they were trading, and we know what the people there said. See, once again, like for example, I'm a jelly griot, right? Or a griot or a jelly, depending on what you want to call us. It's a French word, but it's something it's something now used to describe historians, people who are in West Africa mostly. And these particular type of historians are supposed to use written down stuff, sure, musical things. We're supposed to use art. We're supposed to use, but also we're supposed to use word of mouth, right? To be able to let people know what happened, that there are certain things that are verbal. By the way, a lot of the dances that you might see and you hear somebody singing or do certain things, sometimes that person is literally telling you, this person came from this person, came from this person, and they're going back generations, and they can do it 40, 50, 60, 70 deep, right? But they're telling you, hey, these are the names that happened or whatever. Like if you're going to become a king or a queen, you have to be able to tell people like you came from this, that, or whatever. Queen Elizabeth had to do the very same thing. King Richard had to do the very same thing, right? He has to actually tell you, I came from this, I came from that. So what I'm saying is I get it that it might not be written down, but you'd be surprised how much stuff is there just by what's spoken by mouth. What people do because of a certain culture is that there's a certain culture we're inside of right now that accredits or accreditates everything. And so because they accreditate everything, we say, oh, well, if we don't do it their way, it must not be real. But before that culture existed, we had these. As a matter of fact, things that are word of mouth. How do you get the story of Romulus and Remus? That was strictly word of mouth for the longest time. And then somebody wrote it out. So, language, tells a lot, and the words that you use tell a lot. Heck, and Chinese characters, ancient Chinese characters, if a lot of people don't know, Shangdi was an original Chinese That's who Chinese people, before China became a country, so to speak, but people who we now call Chinese people, after all these wars and everything that's formed this modern version of China, Chinese people, they were they worshipped one deity spirit type person, but they called him Shangdi. But they believed that Shangdi's name was Yahweh or Yahweh. And they believed that this Yahweh caused the flood, and they believed in Noah, and they believed in Shem, Ham, and Japheth. They believed these things. Matter of fact, if you look at their ancient writings, and even their modern writings, like for example, you can't say family in their culture without talking. You have to have 3 pictographs made into one. That pictograph has to represent um, it has to represent um, 8 people. No, I'm sorry. It has to be 8 boat and water. It has to be 8 boat and water put together. That's how you get family. Why do they say that? Because they believe that the original family, at least they did before they were introduced to other things, they did believe in the same story, right? So if they believed in the story of Noah's Ark, and they still today even have it in their writing, it's left over. It's not just in ancient Chinese writing, but it's in modern Chinese writing and their pictographs, right? Then we should look at it and be like, okay, then obviously there's something that was passed down generation to generation, even before writing, and somebody wrote it down, right? It's in pieces. The truth is in pieces. We've been taught to omit certain pieces. How you doing, brother TJ? Let me say, you were under the impression that most word of mouth got kind of butchered by the Catholics. Well, that's if we only go to the Catholics for them. Yeah. If we only go to Roman Catholicism, then so be it. If we're only going to go to Christianity by definition, Christianos, when it first started, was supposed to be just the next level of, dealing with Zeus and things like that. That's why you still say Jesus or Jesus or Yesu or Jesus, right? Just like your Pegasus, Dionysus, Zeus, Jesus or Jesus or Jesus, right? You're talking about the same thing. So it was just the next level, but they tried to sprinkle some Jesus on it, so to speak. They tried to sprinkle some of this biblical stuff on it, but they weren't going to be accurate at all. That wasn't their intent. There really was no culture. So when you go back, kind of sort of the Sumerian stuff, kind of Babylonian, like people will argue who came up with what or whatever. But the story of Gilgamesh is something that really was never a Noah type story. Gilgamesh has so many different stories attached to him. One just so happens that there was a flooding that was a piece of land, like a big chunk of land, but it wasn't the whole earth. Some people have since changed it to now say, oh, that's the story of Noah. But Gilgamesh is something that the story of Gilgamesh that exists. And even there's pieces of that missing. We don't really have the whole story put together, but the stories of Gilgamesh really don't have to do anything with Noah at all. It's kind of like when people say, well, if you're going to talk about Yahshua or who they call Jesus, then you got to talk about Heru or Horus, because Horus, but it's like Horus came out of necrophilia. Like, Horus' mama was, Horus' mama was half bird, half woman. Horus' daddy was Osiris. People didn't like Osiris. They ripped his body apart, or not people, the other Netchers, because we don't have gods in Kemet. We have Netchers. The other Netchers didn't like Horus. Osiris. So they pulled Osiris apart. His wife was flying around and realized that they had killed her husband, and she got all the pieces together, but she couldn't find his phallus. She couldn't find his penis. So what did she do? She made an obelisk. An obelisk is basically a dildo that's supposed to attach to the body and cause life, right? So she got on top of the obelisk, and depending on which version of the story you believe, either he was dead or he was a zombie. So it was necrophilia either way. And out of that, sex with necros, right? Out of that, she got pregnant with Heru, right? Which, by the way, is possible if somebody has their actual phallus attached. Like somebody can be dead and still be able to give seed after their death. It's as gross as it sounds. There's a woman that just got arrested recently for it, where she's doing, I don't know if she's serving time yet or whatever. I know she got arrested a couple months back or something, to where she got on top of a dead man's body and, was able to, whatever, since blood could flow enough, I guess, she was able to get it erect and was able to, have sex with it and then ended up getting pregnant. So, as nasty as it sounds, it is something that is possible of happening, right? But that's necrophilia. It's something we wouldn't suggest, right? It's something that's pretty disgusting, right? But with all those things, that's what happened with the Horus story. So Horus is born out of his mom and his dad. That's what happened. Horus is born, and then Horus basically almost gets impregnated. He's a guy, but he can get impregnated. So we don't even comprehend. It's a different cultural context because he almost gets raped by his uncle, right? There's other stuff with Horus as far as people say, well, he had he had disciples. Yahshua had disciples. He had disciples. So that meant, well, first of all, Yahshua had 12 main disciples, but he had many disciples. Remember, there were 70 people that went out 2 by 2. There were thousands, or there were thousands of people that followed him, the multitudes. When it said that he fed 5,000, it says specifically he fed 5,000 men. So when he said he fed 5,000 men, it's possible he could have fed up to 15,000 people with those 7 fish and or what is it? The 7 fish and 2 loaves of bread or whatever. Why am I forgetting the numbers? I'm forgetting the numbers. I don't know why I'm having a tough time with numbers today. Anyways, but whatever, y'all know the story I'm talking about, right? I don't know why the numbers are missing me, but yeah, like for example, his cultural pieces are missing. You don't know that said just men only. So that means that it wasn't only men that followed him. Because remember, there was even a child who brought up the stuff. So if he fed 5,000 men, it could be something to say that could it be possible there were more women that were following than men? Maybe, but let's just say it was just as many. That's 10,000. Could it be possible that were just as many children that were following around as there were men? Sure, probably more. But let's just say that's 5,000 more. So at least he probably fed at least 15,000 people. It was 2 loaves and 7 fish. Okay, thanks, babe. Right. So it's possible. Or 5 fish. Okay, I'm sorry. I don't know. I'm all over the place with the numbers today. Y'all have to forgive me. I'm gonna try and get these dates together. We're gonna get it together. But the truth is in pieces. Oh, 7 total. Okay, 5 fish, 2 loaves. Okay. There's 7 total. My fault. I misunderstood what you were saying. Right? The original DoorDash. Yeah, right. Except you came to the source and the source made sure you ate. And then there was so much more that people could still take stuff to eat. And so they bagged it up and they had leftovers, and right. But I'm just saying, when we go to that part, when we go to that place, there's missing pieces, right? That's what we're trying to get across is there's missing pieces. The truth is in the missing pieces. You'd be surprised how many missing pieces there are to this stuff. How you doing, Sister Nakia? And how you doing? I'm sorry, unincorporated for life. Okay, thanks for being part of the community. Appreciate you. So we have all these things going on, and that's a reminder once again. Shabbat Shalom. Why? Because we treat today as Shabbat. Why? Because today is a holy day. 2:00 p.m. Eastern New York time on Zoom. We're going to get it in with the Feast of Trumpets. Amen. All right. These are the Feast of Trumpets regarding to the castaway of sins. A Feast of Trumpet is something that we're supposed to make sure that we get together. Feast of Trumpets doesn't really have a particular thing that we have to follow or not follow or whatever as far as procedure, but it's a commandment that we come together. And trumpets really is the announcement point. And if you really look at it right after this, October 5th, we're supposed to do the Day of Atonement. So really it's us coming together as Israel, focusing Day of Atonement. Right after that Day of Atonement, then we have the Feast of Weeks, right? And we're going to do, and on the 8th day, which is where we're going to do the convocation, we then are supposed to come together as well for a holy convocation, right? So literally even in the pieces, like think about it. We don't think about it this way. So think about it. You got the new year, right? You celebrate that, praise Yah, right? Right after that, you go into 2 weeks later, we say Passover. We're thankful for what happened, right? Some things passing over. We're transitioning into the new year. Praise Yah for it. We're focused. The week after during 40 days prior to that, by the way, we're supposed to be making sure we get leaven out of our home. So by the time we get to Passover, there's no more leaven in our home. Leaven representing something that can rise up in us or some type of sin, right? So 40 days go on to getting leaven out of our home, right? Before there was such thing as Lent. Before it was that thing attached to Lupercalia, it was 40 days of getting the leaven out of your home, right? Then after that, you go from the 40 days of leaven out of your home to all of a sudden you get to, and celebrating the beginning of the new year in the midst of that to getting to Passover. Then right after that, we go a week straight of making sure that we still don't have any leaven, the Feast of Unleavened Bread, right? So we have 1 week of making sure that we're not only looking at what's passed over, but then making sure we have no leaven, right? As well, and extending it, pushing past his 40 days and 40 nights of fasting, so to speak, from leaven and from sin. And we push past that, just like Yahshua went into the wilderness for 40 days, 40 nights, and then he was tempted of the Satan, right? And then we go from there to where, okay, cool, we're getting ready for 50 days after Passover, or if you will, 43 days after the Feast of Unleavened Bread. Then we go to the day of Pentecost, which is not something that only happens in the Bible in Acts chapter 2. It's something that was happening starting the same year we did Passover. Every year since then has been the day of Pentecost, right? And then we come together for there. It's the number 50. So it's Jubilee, it's celebration. It's also supposed to be like canceling debts, getting things off of us, being of a new mind, being in a new frame of mind, all these different things or whatever, so we can walk together correctly. We have that leading up now to where we're about to get into what? The Feast of Trumpets, where we blow the shofar to announce to everybody. And by the way, it also is, in a sense, another part of the year that we're about to go into, right? When we talk about this shofar, we're kind of announcing, because there's like a legal year and there's like a spiritual year, right? Legally, we used to have the year kind of start towards now this time of year, right? About around the same time, we don't know exactly what day, but around the same time, Yahshua would have more than likely have been born around this time of year, right? But so that would have actually been like when we actually had our new year, but when we were delivered from Kemet, right, then we celebrated Passover specifically, right? And we don't know this to be so. We don't know this to be so, but more than likely around the 2 weeks prior, that probably represents about how much time that it took for those plagues to happen. And after those plagues happened over these weeks, then all of a sudden we see that it's time for us to leave, right? Like that's how much damage was probably done to Kemet in just a matter of weeks, right? So you start putting this stuff together, it's holistic, right? If you get a piece of it, that's why we say learn the culture. When you get a piece of this thing, you start getting truth, right? We're missing pieces. Start putting these pieces together and you start having more context, right? But we're still sitting there, I'm sorry. So you're going to have shofar. We're announcing everything. We're saying we're coming together. We're blowing the trumpet. We're going to blow the shofar today. Hey, cool. Everybody come together. Let's be ready. Let's be awesome, right? And then after that, what? The Day of Atonement. We come together. Now October 5th is going to come up. What are we going to do? Hey, there's this Day of Atonement. This is the day where we're going to, don't forget, right, the sacrifice that was necessary. Don't forget that there was a high priest that was greater than any high priest who went in and died for us this time the way the high priest would if we were off. This time he went in, right? He went in himself, and he didn't offer up a lamb. He didn't offer up anything else. He offered up himself on the altar, right? His blood flowed on the altar this time, right? Then after that, hey, let's come together, right? And let's make sure that we have this Feast of Weeks, that we are in position, that we come together to ensure, and let's even have a convocation where we come together and meet up together, right? This is all our culture. It's missing pieces. See, when we start doing this regularly, it frees your mind. Even though we're not together physically all the time yet, spiritually, it frees your mind. It has you thinking different. It has me believing different. It has me looking different. It has me acting different. Well, Feast of Trumpet isn't about, so like I said, so there's I'm sorry, Sister Barbara, I missed your question. So Feast of Trumpet, once again, so the new year technically, so it's hard, like, so when you look in the Bible, you'll see some of this too. And then you also have like two different kind of fighting, things going against each other, as far as not even just Judaism, as far as, what we would say Israelite or whatever belief, but even within Israel, like which new year? Because there's 2 years that are going on. It's like, how they'll say an hour, and it depends what kind of hour we're talking about, or they say a day, what kind of day are we talking about? Are we talking about even in the dream, etc.? Well, there's 2 different years, or years starting, so to speak, right? And remember, the calendar is different back then than what we do today. So the blowing of the shofar is really talking about, what used to be the new year. Remember, before we were enslaved to Kemet, we did have our own culture, so we did have a new year. We did start a year at a certain time, right? So if we did have that year, all of a sudden Passover hits, and Passover, now Yahweh says, hey, this is the beginning of the year, right? So 2 weeks before, boom, 15th day, Passover. That's to be able to say this is new year of this or whatever, starting on this. But then once again, Yahshua is born. If you look at when Yahshua is born, he's born around the time of Feast of Trumpets. Right, so you see, like it's 2 different things going on. So one is more so even like I often call it like one a legal one and one a spiritual one. It might be better to say it more like this. One is like an original, And we shouldn't get rid of the original. That's why we still celebrate it. But one is like an original. So we remember this is like something we've always had. Yahshua is even born around this time. Day of Atonement's going to come right behind it, all this stuff, right? But we have this original, but then we also have this one that says, hey, this is to remember that this is the beginning of you being brought out of bondage and you being at the level that you were. Like you were growing to become like the stars of the sky. You were growing like that in Kemet. But once you got released from Kemet, this is when you go and you start going into 40 days in the wilderness. By the way, think about the years, or the day, or not days, but years. Remember that it was prophetically said we would be in the wilderness 40 days that turned into 40 years, right? But remember, in prophecy or in dreams, a day equates to a year. So it actually matches up perfectly, just like the times and half a time matches up to 1,260 days or 1,260 years. That gets us from the Justinian decree 538 all the way up to 1798 when the Pope is killed, right? The head in Revelation that looked like it was killed but came back. You see like a lot of these things that are being told, but we have to know what day, what time, et cetera, et cetera. So you kind of have like an original year, so to speak, that starts, but then you also have like a spiritual year that starts as well, right? So if somebody's going off of one year or the other, then it depends on which calendar. That's why I always say, like, even with not just the Julian calendar, and even with our calendar, you got to know culture. You know, what culture are we talking about? What time are we talking about? I'm sorry, babe. Bounty had a question. Bounty, did I miss a question you had? How you doing, Vonda Christ? Thank you. I'm sorry, Sister Barbara. I was trying to get back, see if you had another comment. I got scrolled down on me. I don't know. I can't even see the original comment question that you had. I'm sorry. How you doing, Minister Slick Morel? How you doing, Mo Desire? How you doing, Sister Bree? If I didn't say so already. Hey, Eugene. How you doing? You said it took forever to find, but you did. Oh, this is but you did Detroit. Is this the brother I met in Detroit? Is that what you're saying? How you doing, CR7? Thanks for being part of the community. I don't know what happened. This thing scrolled down. I can't find anything. I can't find anything. I'm sorry, y'all. I'm having problems right now. Okay. All right. Well, if you said something and I missed it, please forgive me. If you can want to put it back in there. It's Bounty, I didn't see anything on my end. That doesn't mean you didn't put it up. Sometimes I don't get the comments over here. You said, what's on the syllabus today? Well, we're just talking about truth and pieces. That's basically what we're talking about, truth and pieces. If you start getting these pieces together, right? Like, I'm just trying to show you, start piecing, like, don't be afraid of the pieces, really. If when it's going to come down to it at the end, don't be afraid of the pieces. People are going to tell you all this stuff is bad and you don't know what you're talking about and this person lied. Like, it's interesting. Like, even we were talking about, so we're about to get into this book a little bit, even to show you some more of these pieces that are missing, right? And when you see this book, is written by Dr. Ivan van Sertima, or Ivan van Sertima, right? But Ivan van Sertima, black man, African man, and nobody ever had a problem with him until he wrote this book. Once he wrote this book, they said he was a quack. But up until he wrote this book, everybody thought he was the man. Everybody just thought of him as another teacher. He couldn't get work after this. He couldn't get a job because he wrote a book about something that was real. He had to actually learn how to become a speaker. He's not even a great orator when you listen to him, but he had to learn how to speak because on that level, because people were so busy saying that he was wrong. How you doing, Shabbos? If I didn't say so already, how you doing, Sister Sharice? But there's pieces in here. And see, that's what we said, truth separates. If you're in a system where they're telling you that Christopher Columbus discovered America because of the doctrine of discovery, then how in the world are you going to even hear about the African presence in ancient America? Right? You say, oh, wow, you were hearing someone who's educated, Hebraic history. What's my view? Okay, we might come back to that. We'll see if we have time to come back to that. I'm gonna try and hone in a little bit more because that's kind of taking us down a rabbit hole thing, but we might be able to come back to that. Because I mean, there's a lot to that. There, I don't even know, in all honesty, because it's not necessarily something that we carry as much as. And I'm not sure if I would have, stuff that you might want to go on that as far, because it's more of like mysticism. It's not Kabbalah per se, but it's more Kabbalah-ish. Uh, so it's like, what's the best way to say it? It's like the Kabbalah, I guess, is like because if I remember correctly, and I don't even know if I'm saying it correctly. I think it's Sefer Yet. I think they would say Yetzirach or Yetzirach. It's more like mathematical equations and stuff that are attached to the spiritual side of things. But you can say some of it works, some of it doesn't. But it's a lot of different things. Like it talks about passive wisdom. It's not 22, it's 32 passive wisdom, stuff like that. But I'm not really qualified. I'm just gonna be honest with you. I don't know if I'm qualified enough, but if we get a chance, maybe I can look some stuff up and see what I can find, and we can talk through it. But yeah, it talks a lot about mysticism. It's not that much into what we would say is kingdom, and it's more Talmudic as far as what I've remember of it and what I've been told about it, even by people who are Jewish or Jews, etc., whatever they would call themselves, or Zionists even. But to each their own. I just don't know. I'm just gonna be honest. It has a lot more to do with some of those things. But we can see if we have time. I'd have to really be able to like focus in on it. So I might have to be something I have to come back and talk about. Oh, thank you. Is it Snowmoo? I don't know how to pronounce it. Snomuwu. Thanks for being on. So yeah, so it's more so, yeah, that Babylonian Talmudic type stuff, which is stuff we have to be careful about. If you know what it's about, I would suggest then to read it, but only if you know what it's enough about the culture of it, because it can be really confusing. A lot of people read it and they don't know which way to go with what after that. Like it can be very confusing thing. But yeah, so I just wanted to show. So like these are pieces of the story that might be missing for some, and I'm gonna try. So if you get a chance to do a screenshot, I don't have pictures of these. I'm literally just using the book today, right? So I'm gonna try and get it close to you guys as I talk about it. So I'll go to YouTube first, and then I'll go to TikTok with each picture, right? But I'm gonna just read the description, and then we'll talk about it some. All right. So the the tort the Tordesillas line, right, which basically is drawn at the request of King Don Juan of Portugal in June 1494, before the European discovery of South America, on the strength of information gleaned from African mariners in Guinea, right? Which, by the way, if you say Guinea, a lot of people don't know Guinea. We're talking about West Africa, and we're talking about a whole part. Like people forget that there was a part of Africa for a while over where Ghana, Nigeria, Sierra Leone, and maybe not up to Sierra Leone, but in that area down, all the way down to Ghana, etc. Like all that stuff in there is actually called either Negro land, because that's Negro is actually one of the oldest names for West African tribes that came out of Africa. Remember, Negros went in as Moors, or even as Carthaginians, went into what we now know as Spain and cultivated something that now you know as Spain, right? So, but you had Negro land on West Africa, and then you had Guinea. So when he says Guinea, you got to realize that Guinea is what European people came over and said, this is what this one tribe, Guinea, we're going to say everybody is Guinea in a huge chunk of West Africa, okay? So drawn at the request of King Don Juan of Portugal in 1494, before the European discovery of South America, on the strength of information gleaned from African mariners in Guinea. So African mariners knew about South America, right? People don't know this, right? But we know for a fact. Matter of fact, we know that as early as 1482, bare minimum, because Christopher Columbus had it in his journal that he had been sailing with African mariners. When they keep saying African people didn't have ships that could sail everywhere, and we know for a fact that he learned in 1482 about how to be able to get over to what he called the land of Asheroth in 1492. Okay. So, but this is saying in 1494, when Portugal got a hold of this information, that their king said to draw a line. I'm going to show you the picture in a second. He said to draw a line, and it was called the Tordesillas, or depending on where you are from, Tordesillas, or Tordesillas line. All right. And the line is 375 leagues west of the Cape Verde Islands, which is about 1,680 miles using Vespucci's, Amerigo Vespucci's measurement of a league. So his measurement of a league is different. So when you hear league, don't always assume they're the same. Once again, this is cultural, and was later seen to include roughly 200 miles of Brazil. So once they found out that Brazil was a real place, then they started to, and they found out about it, they put this line together. Okay, so I want to start off there because you might not be aware. I'm going to start off on YouTube. You might need to take a screenshot. I'm going to try and hold it as still as possible. Right? And I'm going to come over to TikTok in a second with this stuff. I'm going to make sure everybody can see this. You're going to have to take a screenshot today, okay? I don't have, right? I'm going to try and hold it as steady as I can. Right, but so you're dealing with people who are trying to find new ways of marking something that they're starting to take over. And they found out about this stuff based off of the strength of what? Of African mariners. By the way, if you know about this makes perfect sense. Because if you know about Mali, right, Mansa Musa and them, and Mansa Musa's brother who was king before him, and his father before him, and et cetera, you'll know that these Mansas actually used to disappear, and they would go, and eventually now it's theorized, but at the same time they speak languages that were spoken in Mali at the time, right? So it is theorized, so to speak, that they came over to South America because there's a bunch of places and there's a bunch of kingdoms that were put up to where these kings came across, right? So this was stuff that we already knew about and were doing. This was not something that was new, brand new. It's something that was going on for generations. Don't forget, when Christopher Columbus makes his way over, he brings over an Avre or Hebrew interpreter with him, right? An Ivrit person, an Avre, a black person who was Hebrew from West Africa, comes over with him on this trip, who would have thought of himself as being in classism. So even when they started getting slaves, even if he was against it, he would have been like, well, I'm a better class, right? So it's not as that's why when people introduce, well, black people sold people into slavery. I mean, yeah, there were some black people that were messed up. Does it mean that slavery was still cool? No, right? But you got to put all these factors in. There's missing pieces, right? So that's something like that. That's there. Remember, he came over. It was a Hebrew interpreter he brought with him. The Hebrew interpreter has a conversation with somebody over there who can speak Avre or enough Hebrew, or the dialect is close enough where they can have conversation. And he tells them, yeah, we've been trading with you guys in Africa for years. He says Christopher Columbus, and Christopher Columbus doesn't believe it. He says, well, here's a guanine weapon, gives him a spear, right? And the metallurgy that was made for the tip of the spear is the same percentage and everything, and made the same way that they did in West Africa. He said, yeah, we've been mixing here and having children and stuff for centuries. So, this is not new for us to see somebody who comes over from somewhere else. Christopher Columbus is blown away, doesn't believe it, goes back. But he knows, because he's been with West African sailors and East African sailors. He's been all over with all types of black sailors. But he knows that something is true about this, but he brings it back, gets it checked out in Spain, because they just fought against the Moors. So they know about these weapons. They're like, yeah, those are real. They take it to the Pope. And the Pope's people look at it and say, yeah, that's real. They verified. They got their blue check mark, if you will, on that. And so you said almost no society gets to the level of the Mansas and doesn't develop oceanic travel. Exactly. That in and of itself, right, should be. Yeah, you said they had the infrastructure. That oceanic travel is honestly a foregone conclusion. Exactly. By the way, don't forget, even Rome had to learn from Africans how to sail. Rome thought it was like kind of, forgive using my language, but they thought it was weak. They thought you were a punk. They thought it was like sissified, so to speak, to say that I'm going to go ahead and sail. So Rome didn't even like to sail. They had a very small, weak fleet, and then they came against the Carthaginians, North Africans. The Carthaginians had the greatest, weapon by boat at the time that the world had ever seen, and could sail just about anywhere. And we think of Carthage as they try to limit it only to one place, Carthage, North Africa. And they had, influence in other parts of Africa as well. So, you had Rome that was rising up, Carthage that was already in place in the fight. That's what those Punic wars, the Phoenician, Punic wars, that's what those were about. So we know that we had travel. But once again, somebody will say, it doesn't make sense. Or somebody will say, there can't have been slave ships because nobody could sail that much. You saying you could take a human being, like even if you just take human beings, period, but now you're saying you're going to put them in place and lay them down, this and that or whatever. Well, Africans were sailing all around from Kemet, all around Africa, and then going to the other side of Africa. Africans were going from West Africa to South America, from Africa, West Africa, over to North America. Right? Like we know this. They came before Columbus. So to think that it can't be done, now the people that enslaved you or made you prisoners of war, they had to learn from you how to do it. You said, what's this rumor about the Grand Canyon goes to Africa? That's a rumor that I'm not aware of. I don't know. You have to tell me about it. But basically, you have this thing going on here, right? So this is just a piece, right? Or when somebody does this, and once again, because of the blood quantum, people don't like it. But I'm gonna just show you. So these are Negroid heads in pre-Christian Mexico. So this is pre-Christian. This is before Europeans are coming over, basically, right? In Mexico, before you Cristianos, there was what? There were belief systems. And there were people that were there, right? And they don't have, out of all the stuff, is interesting. And I forgot in this book, I thought, because there's different books he has. I thought in this book he had the big Mayan or the big Olmec heads, but I guess he doesn't have those in the particular picture. He has it in the beginning of the book. I guess let me show you all that too. I'm sorry, I showed you the top of the book, but I didn't tell you what that was. I thought it was going to be in the pictures. I guess I remember wrong. Let me see, double check, so I don't get ahead of myself. Okay, these are some of them. Okay, he has some of them. Yeah, he does. All right, cool. All right, so we're gonna get there. Matter of fact, I'll just show you some of them now because it'll kind of help you with what I'm about to do. If you haven't read this or if you haven't seen this before, this might be something that's kind of new. So you'll see in a lot of these heads, a lot of these ancient heads, and these are, let me make sure I'm saying correctly. Yeah, so you have like Negroid magician at Copen and Honduras from different perspectives. You're going to see a Negroid stone head from Veracruz. And this is actually something you can go and see at the Museum of Natural History in New York. Right here, in this picture right here. And I'm going to show it on both sides. But on this side, if you're on YouTube, you can look at it real quick, take a screenshot if you need to. Right, but these are pictures of people, right, that were in Veracruz or even Honduras, right, and yet we'll say that these people didn't exist, or there's no way Black people were there, or these people couldn't have been Black, they couldn't have been mixed, they couldn't have been mixing together, right? And TikTok, here you go. But can you see clearly something's going on, right? These are people that were either worshipped or were looked at as being, practitioners. But somebody would go, well, that's not a lot, right? You said YouTube that Arizona was connected to Africa. That's somebody messing around with the Pangea thing. Even people that believe in Pangea, that's something that's kind of new. But see, you even see something. I don't know. We can go off of this, for example. We can go off of this right here, this top one over here. It's supposed to be a little boy, right? It's supposed to be a little boy right here. His nose, as you see, his nose has been beaten off, though, right? Which is something that we know that they did in Kemet, which kind of tells you a little story as well, a missing piece, right? So his nose was beaten off. They did that to the Sphinx. They did that to a lot of Kemetic people and rulers. They did that to a lot of Roman rulers. Remember, like Septimius Severus, he was African. And you'll find some stuff with his nose missing because a lot of people, you got to understand the word Europe, it comes from Europa. Europa literally used to just mean anything that belonged to Rome. So if you were a Roman province, so Europeans, they are people that want to claim Roman history. So a lot of Europeans, Eurocentric people used to go around, they used to shoot off noses because they wanted to classify themselves as being Kemetic or being whatever. You say if the world is round, then it has to connect one to another. They have closed down part of Arizona. Well, I don't know. I just went through Arizona. That wasn't my experience, but I mean, you could be correct on that. Either way, you said religion is systematically set up to be a scam to avoid the justice system. Okay. We already talked a lot about religion. We did science versus religion the last 3 days. And in all honesty, I'm not going to just, if you'd like to look at the recording of that, if y'all even feel like actually having discussion or feeling what we feel about that, feel free to look at that on our YouTube channel. Last 3 days straight has been science versus religion, to try and tell people that to try and keep separating science from spirituality or science from religion or whatever you want to call it. It's kind of foolhardy, and you got to have cultural perspective. The word religion literally means religion, a legion of people that repetitively do the same thing. So if you read books every day, a bunch of people read books every day, that's religiously reading the book. Yeah, Mexicans were known as a mix of Olmec and Aztec, etc. African children, first generation. Yeah, most def. That's why you don't have. That's why you don't say if you're from Mexico, you don't say x, because that's not the language. This is you're speaking. It's Mexico, because in Spanish language there is no x sound. So when you talk about all these x that come up in Central America, South America, that's because you're talking about a whole nother people. All right, but let's keep on going. Right, I want to show you the bottom picture of that same page now. This is on the human being. The picture, the modern picture you're going to see is the head of a Nuba chief from Africa, and then we're going to show you on the other side of Olmec Negroid stone. Okay, so y'all see that on the bottom right there on YouTube. You see that you got the head of a chief, and then you also got the head of a stone, right? Of these African people who were bare minimum mixed with people of that land, right? All right, I'm showing TikTok. I'm sorry. There you go, that bottom picture. You got a chief here on the left, and you got an African head on the right. And by the way, there's a lot of things you can look up. You can go on Google, do a Google image search. Just do Google image search of Olmec Stonehead or Olmec Stonehead Black people or something like that. And you'll see a lot of people who do even a much better job than this book does of showing you a lot of people who look like these heads that you're going to see and where they come from. Right now, but somebody might say, oh, you're stretching a little bit still, right? Even though we know like some of these heads have even been found with colors on them. And when they were found with colors on them, the colors, these people were painted black, right? But the truth is in pieces. But let's keep looking through the pieces. On the other side, I'll show it on YouTube first. You're gonna be looking at rulers. Now I don't know how to pronounce these rulers' names. I'm gonna do my best. But you have these are Negroid headstones, and not all these headstones that were found, by the way, are black. There are or are African, right? There are stones that don't look African. They're still brown people, but they're not African, right? So nobody's saying that every person, every head that they ever found, or everything in these places have to be black. I want to make that clear, because people will say, we're trying to tell you that, hey, even if not everybody was what you would call by social construct a black person, there's proof that there were people that were moving around and going to see each other, right? Okay, so Negroid stoneheads in the Olmec heartland, and this is going to be rulers A, B, C, D, E, F. A is Tres Zapates, all right, the first. B is going to be San Lorenzo the first, right? But by the way, you can see they gave them Spanish names, but obviously they would not have been Spanish people. So even their names are off, right? We can tell. Obviously, the truth is in pieces, right? So we're taking these pieces apart and seeing that, wait a minute, these pieces never went together. Somebody glued them and stuck them and beat them to where they could fit, but they are warped, right? You said you just saw something yesterday about characters from Dragon Ball Z representing code. Oh yeah, most of. We could do that all day. I'm not into Dragon Ball GT and all that and whatever they are now, but I definitely can talk a little bit about some Dragon Ball Z for sure. But anyway, C is going to be San Lorenzo the fourth. D is going to be San Lorenzo the sixth. E is going to be Tres Zapates the second, and F is going to be La Vinta the first. Okay, and we want you to look at these. So here we go. There's 6 of them. If you want to look at it, take a screenshot. If you're on YouTube, if you're watching this later on, you can always pause this on YouTube and look at these pictures. And you will see that these are kings, right? And these kings look a little familiar. Maybe they look like some people that show up, when you were doing Thanksgiving dinner. Maybe they look like some of the people that look like they come to your Thanksgiving dinner table, right? This is before Columbus. This is before Columbus, right? Some people still have a problem with it. You're going to see it's going to get tough in a second, because it's going to get, the way they have it set up, it gets tougher and tougher and tougher to fight against this. People will try, but it gets tougher and tougher and tougher to fight against this. Okay, here we go. Plate 29. So this is evidence, basically. Evidence 29, Exhibit 29, and Exhibit 30 coming up. Exhibit 29, the Black Warrior. Actually, we'll go over Exhibit 29. Black Warrior Dynasty in ancient Mexico. A is going to be Olmec Negroid stone head, San Lorenzo the Fifth. So these are people that are all supposed to be connected. Okay. And then B is going to be Olmec Negroid stone head, San Lorenzo the Fourth, which we saw already, but now you're seeing him in a different place. And by the way, you'll notice on San Lorenzo the Fourth that his nose is chipped. Same thing that we're doing. Interesting. Why are we seeing African noses chipped in Kemet, and seeing them chipped in Rome, and seeing them chipped in Asia, and seeing them chipped in Libya and other places, and seeing them chipped in Kush? But then we're saying that when they chipped them over here, they didn't chip them for the same reason. You see? So let's look. I'm sorry. You can barely see the one. Hopefully you can kind of see it. This is the fourth. This is the fifth. So this is daddy. This is son. So daddy, even though daddy's nose is missing, that's his son. That's what daddy's nose looked like. Got right? Y'all see that? Okay. All right, let's keep on going. On the bottom, you have an Olmec Negroid head, stone head, Tres Sabatos II. All these people, family, right? Remember, we were just talking about on the other page, we were family. All right, so this is what the second looks like. Okay. Tell me what he looks like. All right, tell me what he looks like. Y'all see that? This is a book, right? Everybody should have this in life. Even if you disagree with it, you should still have it in your library to disagree correctly, right? Because you'd be disagreeing off of stuff that we're not even talking about. They came before Columbus, the African presence in ancient America. And by the way, the person who wrote this, Dr. Yvonne von Sertima, is Black, right? However, he's not the person that pieced this stuff together. It was a white scientist that got all the artifacts together. A lot of the artifacts that he inherited from him, because he became a student under him. He became his disciple. He became his student. He became his apprentice. And so being underneath him, he learned from a white guy to put this together. Nobody had a problem when it was a white guy saying it, or they just dismissed him as whatever. But then when Dr. Yvonne von Sertima came out, now they said that he's hokey, he's stupid, he ain't got blah, blah, but he got it from your people. Why didn't you say it was bad when it was your person, your man that was saying it? When it's my man's that say that you got a problem. When it's your man, you said it's cool. That's gang warfare right there. That's straight up being dishonest. That's straight up cognitive dissonance. If your people do it, it's okay, but if my people do it, it's not. Mm-hmm. Yeah, you say that I'm gonna be centered around my people, right? And now we got a problem. But why we got a problem? Your guy said the same thing my guy said. He's just verified. My guy is literally just saying the same thing your guy said. Right? Here's another one though. We're gonna look on this side now, and we're gonna see in Exhibit 31, Plate 31. We're gonna see on top that there's a Nuba chief from Kenya. From where? From Kenya. So we going all around Africa giving some stuff, but this is Nuba, right? Nuba chief from Kenya. We're gonna show you what he looks like, and then we're gonna see Tres Sabatos, right? So that's the original one. And let's see what he looked like and see if you see anything. Right? So let me show it on YouTube again. Now let's look on TikTok. Y'all see that? right? Now, right, even look at the hairstyle. Look at the hair. Look at the way the hair is. Look at the coarseness, even if you will. Some people call it coarse, right, or nappy or whatever. Look at it, right? Look at that on YouTube again, real quick. Look at that. Look at that. Tell me that. Tell me that's not your man right there that just went and got his stuff shaped up, and people be joning on him talking about he got the Batman. He got the Batman lineup. Yeah, he look a lot like Marcus, right? It's the same thing. This time he wasn't wearing a headdress. This is this is generations later. What his children gonna look like, right? This is the same picture, but now this is what the original ain't got no headdress on. He ain't wearing no headdress. This is what his hair looked like. That's right there. That's right there. Here in in America, in North America. That blade look. See, I didn't even think about that, but that's a great that shape up right there. That's a blade shape up. You can't tell me now that you said it. I can't unsee that for the rest of my life. I'll be like, yo, he got that blade shape up. That's a great way of saying it, Kenzo. But for real, you can't tell me that you don't see yourself in that. You hear what I'm saying? People are trying to tell you different, right? But there's pieces. There's missing pieces. We got to find the truth in pieces. These pieces are out there, but they're being hidden from you. Widow's peak. Yeah. Right. Here's another one. All right. This is plate 32, exhibit 32, if you will, before the juror. Human-headed coffin from Costa Rica. So this is where? Costa Rica. Not even the same place. We're bouncing around now, y'all. Right? Showing how many places we were. Right? Human-headed coffin from Costa Rica. Negroid head with phallus between stylized foot. Right? Which, by the way, the phallus, important in Kemet, right? Because of the obelisk. Guess what? On the coffin, they put in the phallus there. And by the way, some Kemetic coffins have that phallus in between the feet at the bottom, too. But let's go ahead. Negroid head with phallus between stylized footrest. Compare with human-headed coffin from Arkin in Nubia. So in Nubia, they have the same type of coffin. They're going to have it on the bottom drawn out for you. Both are terracotta, right? Which basically just means they're both really old, if we can say it like that, made out of the earth. The phallus in the American model is probably also an influence. See phallic cults in Kemet and America depicted in plate 33. So we'll show. I'm not going to show that because they just tried to say I was showing nude pictures. So I'm gonna make sure that we don't do that. They lied on us when we were just mentioning male and female. Somebody lied and said, so I'm going to cover up one side of it, right? So you can't see it. But if you look, you'll see on the bottom on YouTube first, you see on the bottom, there are some, you have the coffin up top and you have the coffin on the bottom. One is in Costa Rica. The other one is in Kenya. Oh, no, I'm sorry. Is this Kenya? And yeah. Oh, no, I'm sorry. It's in Nubia, which is Kush. Sorry about that. So you're talking about South Sudan. You're talking about Ethiopia. You're talking about things that influence Kemet, because Kemet got all their stuff basically from there. So look at this on here, right? So Kemet obviously changes up, but you can see the shape is similar. The one on the bottom is the one that's Nubian, or the one that's Cushitic, right? The one that's African, the one that would influence what they do in Kemet, right? So you can see, and they had and the heads that they drew on there, they were African. Now look at the head on the top of this one. I don't know if you can see it or not. I'm gonna try and get as best I can, but you'll see that it has Negroid, so to speak, features as well, right? Well, we've already shown the name of the book several times. I'll try to show it again. I know they came from Columbus. They came before Columbus. All right, they came before Columbus. They came before Columbus. The African presence in ancient America, Ivan von Sertim. Right, and this is, once again, I'm telling you, when you study this book, now the next page I'm not going to show because they already tried to lie before and say we were showing naked pictures of people, so I'm not going to do that. But when you look at this, what was I trying to do? Oh yeah, when you look at the next page, you'll see that it shows you about how you have a lot of phallic type stuff that's shown or whatever, because the phallus, like even the ankh, if you wear an ankh is nothing more than what the ovaries or the womb up top, either arms, it was considered to be fallopian tubes rather, and then you have the phallus at the bottom. So it's very comedic for that to happen. Okay. Now this one is going to be a little tough for y'all to see. I admit it's even tough to see if you watch it, looking at it in the book. But here's one to where you'll see that there's a big Negroid rock mask, and at I don't know if I'm saying this right, at Chalcazingo near Morelos, Mexico, dated 800 to 700 BC, by Gillett G. Griffin, curator at Princeton University Museum. Von Withenow notes similarity to braceleted arm of Assyrian king. What kind of king, by the way? Because we think of dark only being African, but Assyrians would have been considered to be just as African as you and I. That's why you got to be careful when you're getting into this stuff. Not all skin folk is kinfolk, and not all people had the same belief, right? So let's not do this thing that everybody in Africa believe the same thing, right? We can see that even that truth in pieces. But this is something that this was similar to the braceleted arm of Assyrian king Ashurna Serpo II, who's supposed to be king from 883 BC to 859 BC. But this kind of hand seal was also in vogue in the 25th dynasty, when the Nubian king Shabaka stamped his hand in wet clay beside that of the Assyrian king Sennacherib to sign their seal of their truce. Okay, so they're saying that they found this in Morelos, Mexico, and it looks like the same type of seals that kings were using to either further peace or to show their rule, etc., their authority. They were doing that all the way over with Assyrian kings, right? African kings, Assyrian kings doing this together. All right. So here's the picture. It might be difficult for you to see. I'm gonna try and point to the face for you. So there's the face if you right there for YouTube. You see that? And that's a stamp and something similar that was being used to a stamp. Here's the face, right? You see all that, and you got the face right there. So there's the face. And that was something that was similar to how they would stamp things in for treaties and things like that over in Africa. By the way, remember that there was Pangea. So before everybody was split into different directions or whatever, or before Pangea split up, all these things were there. I'm sorry, hold on 1 second. I'm hearing some noise. Let me check something real quick. Salah, just give me a minute. I promise I'll be right back. We still got some more stuff to show, but I want to figure out what this is, make sure everybody's okay. 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 All right. Thank you for your patience. So y'all seeing some stuff now? Oh, you can see the hand too. Oh, real talk. I didn't even catch that. That's a great observation. You talking about up here? Yeah, I didn't even catch that. Wow. There you go. Yep. Right. So they use that same similar type of style of print right over in Africa. Okay. Some of this stuff, now I'm be honest, some of this stuff I wouldn't take, you spit out the meat, you eat the meat, spit out the bones type thing. But you'll see a lot of these different things that came over. For example, okay, here's one. Opening the mouth ceremony in Mexico and Kemet, right? So Mexico, which basically when you talk about Mexico, you're talking about Olmec-Shi. That's what the people who were originally called when they found these heads, right? The people that predate these people. So if you say you're Taino, for example, if you're Taino, you're really Olmec-Shi, right? That's where Mexico came from. There is no Mexico before they came over here, right? There is no X sound. So you can't have a X sound in Espanol. In Espanol, no X, right? no x in español. En español, what A, B, C, D, E, F, G, what is it? I forget it. I'm trying to do a Kiswahili thing. It's H in Kiswahili. Was it? Is it H or something like that? H, yeah, H, E, H, K. I'm sorry, I'm doing different stuff now. E, yeah, H, K, L, and then you have L, and then ella or whatever. M, N, N, O, P. I forget what Q makes the sound of. Forgive me. R, S, because even Q really isn't their language. Like Q is really qua for everybody. I forget what Q is. Then you have, yeah, S, T. I might be doing other. I think I'm mixing Latin languages now in my head. U, I forget. U, va, or V. Yeah, I'm doing W or W. I forget what X is called again. Then you have Y, E, and then Z, za, or Z, or something like that, right? So when you're dealing with those things, you're looking for key. It's in the front pocket. So when you're dealing with those things, you got to realize that you're dealing with a lot of different things, right? But it's so when you say Olmec, or when you're talking about Mexico, you're coming from Olmec-Shi. There is no x sound in Espanol, right? There is no x sound, right? So when you're talking about Mexico, that's why they say Mexico. But when you say Mexico, you're actually speaking an initial language. So here in this Olmec style and in this Kemetic style, you'll see that the opening of the mouth ceremony in Mexico or Olmec-Shi in Egypt. Compare a Kemetic papyrus painting from the Book of the Dead, depicting the opening the mouth ceremony with B, wall painting in cave at Juxtlahuaca, with gigantic figure wearing lion skin. He holds two ceremonial objects similar to the Kemetic before the kneeling man. Both priests wear skins of beasts whose tails hang between their legs, and both proffer a snake-headed instrument to the kneeling bearded man. Okay, so that's basically talking about the top of this page. You'll see you have the Kemetic side, and then you have, right, this is Kemet, and then the opposite is going to be the man with the you have Olmec-Shi. All right, so here you have Kemet, you got Kemet right here, and then you have Olmec-Shi. Right, you got Kemet, and then you have Olmec-Shi. Very similar, right? Very similar. But people say, no, those are similar. But see, you see, after a while, what I'm saying is the truth is in pieces. Because even if you keep saying it's just similar, you trying to put this together, like after a while, if I give you 50, 100, 200, like there's thousands of these things that are out there, right? There's hundreds of heads that they found. These huge heads. These heads are huge, by the way. These heads are bigger than me. I'm 6'5.5", and they make me look small, right? Like these heads are huge. They dwarf people, right? And so these people made these because they believe these people were of importance. Okay, they didn't just make these randomly. They believed these things because these people were of importance. They believe these people were what? Of importance. Now let's go to this. I'm going to go to plate 39, which is the Piri Reis map. Drawn in 1513, drawn when? 1513, drawn when? 1513. When did Christopher Columbus go over? 1492. This was drawn by Europeans in 1513 from earlier maps found in the Library of Alexandria by the Turkish Admiral Piri Reis. Wait a minute. So these are things that existed in the Library of Alexandria. Now, question, where is the Library of Alexandria located? You said, and the heads were set up in a way to show reverence, looking into the heavens. Yeah, a lot of them were, most deaf. Yeah, you want it, right? Where was the Library of Alexandria? Yeah, the Library of Alexandria is in Kemet, which means that this Turkish admiral came to Kemet and got a map to help them to sail across from Africa to America, from Europe to America, whatever the case might be. They got it from a place in Kemet. Now, question: does that mean that? Then that means that Kemetic people would have probably had knowledge concerning travel, because remember the Romans who had to conquer the Greeks. The Romans didn't even have ships like that. The Greeks kind of sort of had ships like that. The Romans didn't. It was the Carthaginians who were the ones that had to basically accidentally teach the Romans how to be able to become great sailors. And you're telling me that Kemetic people and Kush people who carried gold and silver and marble, tons of it on ships up and down the Nile River to be able to build pyramids. You're telling me that they had no knowledge of this when in the Alexandrian library, the one that they burned down. Y'all remember they burned it down? The one that they burned down didn't want you to know nothing. But in there, we have specific evidence that came out of that library from a Turkish king. That means he's Ottoman Empire. That means he's Eastern Rome, coming out of a Eurocentric mindset. But he went there and realized, hey, if I want knowledge, I need to go here, because Kemetic people know how to sail from one place to the other. To be fair, it was accidental. We don't know for sure. We don't know that it was. It wasn't. So we'll be fair there. We're not 100% either way. We just know there was a fire there. So Turkish Admiral Piri Reis, it depicts fairly accurate. So there's a little stuff that's off, but it tells you that it's fairly accurate latitudinal and longitudinal or longitudinal sorry, longitudinal relationships between the Atlantic coastlines of Africa and South America. Reading of longitude was only achieved by Europeans in the 18th century. Yeah, they did so with reed ships and stuff. Yeah. You said, yes, they wanted to destroy any information about true historical values. That's what a lot of us believe. But once again, I'll be fair, we don't have evidence to say that they did it. Right. There are people, once again, this is word of mouth. There are people word of mouth who live there, and families have been around long enough to keep saying that's what happened. But we're not supposed to believe it unless somebody writes it down in the book, because it has to be written down in books that are verified by other people's culture. That's why I'm giving you a book where this book is going to mess with a lot of people, because even people that are native, they've been told that they're more Asian, or they've been told that they're more white, and they've gone through a lot of different things. So there's a fight in between our community. If you have any indigenous blood to the Americas, to the island, there's a fight in our community over this book. A lot of people don't like this book, because you gotta say, well, if this happened, then not only did we have to be mixed in when you guys enslaved us, when y'all learned from y'all slave master, but we actually got to talk about the fact that a lot of us have native blood, and a lot of us have native blood that's not necessarily attached to Africa at all in our DNA percentage and all that stuff, right? So it becomes a really wild conversation, even in our own community. But let me just show you this map, right? Here you go on YouTube. I don't know how well you'll be able to will or won't see it, but this is a map, right? Using longitude and latitude. This is a map that somebody who was Turkish went to Kemet to find in the 1500s, in the 16th century. And nobody in Europe was able to use the same way of mapping things until the 1800s or the 19th century. See? But if you don't know any better, you'll think that you ain't done nothing, and that you need to get something that's accredited by somebody else. No, you don't. This was you, right? Look, watch this. This ain't even you in the 15th. I'm sorry, in the 16th century. This is actually you over in earlier than that. They just didn't find out that they could go and get it out of Kemet until the 16th century. And they didn't find out how to be able to do the same thing on their own until the 19th century, which, by the way, wouldn't have been on their own because they were schooled by you. Right? Right? Well, Wame, if you really need some help or whatever, get in contact with us. You can go to our TikTok page. Just click on the link tree. And once you click on the link tree, you can get in contact with us, and we can listen and hear you out, and whatever we can do, we'll do to help you. You said that's not even longitude and latitude. That's got some extra. Well, yeah. I mean, I'm just saying the closest they can come to longitude and latitude, right? Which, by the way, whatever we want to call it, we can say that we can say that it was. Now, was it perfect? No, but it was pretty accurate as far as somebody could use this and know that, hey, I can use this enough to be able to get to certain places from Africa to South America to North America. Right. So we have this accuracy, right? By the way, like even just something as simple as pyramids. I don't think we ever think about this. Once again, don't forget that there's Pangea, if you will, or there's the Earth was together at one point. So South America and Africa and India and the America, what we call now United States of America, Mexico or Omex, a lot of this stuff, Australia, they're attached together. So you're going to see a lot of similarities anyways. I think that's something that's a missing piece as well, is that we're arguing a lot about a lot of this stuff and not realizing, wait a minute, we were connected literally. Like you could walk across land if you wanted to and walk from what we now call different continents. It was just one. Yeah, but don't forget, even like if you get a chance to look at the Mississippians, Mississippi is a people. Now you think it's a state or a country within a country, right? Or a country within a group of countries, because a state just means country. But you think Mississippi is just a state. Mississippi was a people, and they themselves built pyramids, right? And they themselves built pyramids. You see what I'm saying? Like the Mississippians, they themselves are building pyramids. So, and there's more pyramids in Mississippi than there probably are in any other place in the world, as far as concentrated in the same place. You can go visit them. A lot of them have been taken down now, and now they have some of them where they opened up, but you can go visit them. Matter of fact, remember Mississippian territory, it stretched all the way over to Georgia. So, like they had stuff from Georgia, Alabama, Mississippi, all that stuff was right there next to each other, and a whole bunch of pyramids going all the way down to the waters. Were they huge pyramids like the ones like the Great Pyramid or like the Step Pyramid and all these different things? No, they weren't like that, but they had pyramids. A whole lot of them. Some that they would stand upon, some that you weren't supposed to stand upon because it was something where people who were dead lived inside of, different things. But they had a whole bunch of them. So it shouldn't be weird to us that if we see them there, and we see some in West Africa, definitely see some in East Africa. We see little glimpses of some that seem to be in South America. By the way, there's some that are in the ocean, in the waters, at the bottom of the sea, right, or bottom of the waters, right, right over at Cuba. There's pyramids now in the bottom of the water and bottom of Cuba, which could show easily how this stuff is spreading apart when you have Pangea going across and coming apart. Like you got the stuff there. So there's pieces. So I'm just trying to show you pieces. Like these are things that are pieces that are missing. Last piece I'll show, and then we'll be done with this book. I just wanted to show some pictures. Like I said, this is a great book. Read the whole thing when you have a chance. Like go through the actual book and you'll see a lot of different things that are there. Right. Here are Negroid heads on pre-Columbian portrait vessels. Okay. Pre-Columbian portrait vessels. Post-classic Negroid head. So A is going to be post-classic Negroid head on portrait vessel in Oaxaca with stirrup handle. Then B is going to be a Negroid head on portrait vessel, also from Oaxaca or Zapotec. And then you're going to have a classic, I think it's Mochica. I might be wrong on that. Mochica Negroid portrait vessel from Peru, circa 900, right? So Arab African contact period. So this is 900. So that's one more recent. So, and when I say one more recent, we're talking about in perspective, in relativity to Columbus coming over, since they keep telling us that he discovered America, right? So there you go. These are what these people look like. These are what these people look like. Now, once again, some of them are mixed. Some of them are straight African because of where they came from. Some of them are black people that were here already. Some of them are people of color. There's different shades that can be to them. But what we're trying to say is before Christopher Columbus came over, we can tell, right? At this point, we can see the evidence that obviously somebody's coming there. Matter of fact, here's another one for you that when I learned this, this probably 15, 20 years ago, when I learned this blew my mind. I was like, why does nobody ever talk about that? You know that when they exhumed some of the bodies, or they, tested and messed with some of the mummies and everything in, in these tombs and stuff that they found, that they actually found out that there's cocaine in some of the mummies and some of these rulers. Now, why is that a big deal? It's a big deal because the coca plant doesn't grow in Africa. At least it's not native to Africa, right? The coca plant comes from where? From the Americas. So if somebody was sniffing cocaine thousands of years before Christ, or was eating cocaine or eating coca plant thousands of years before Christ over in Kemet, then it means that thousands of years before Christ, somebody had to know enough to be able to get this stuff, or the land had to be connected recently enough to where somebody could just come over and get it. You know what I'm saying? Like after a while, these pieces are there. It's like, I can't deny these pieces. You said you're looking to see African Queen. Hope they keep factual narrative. You talking about in this book? They have one. I think I skipped over it. There's a lot of stuff. I must be mixing up his books, because there's a lot of stuff that I thought was in this that I'm not seeing. Give me a second. Oh, I'm glad I went back. Praise God. You know what? I was about to talk about these heads right here, and I didn't, but I'm going to just bring your attention to one right here. This is Queen Ty right here. This is the queen over here. You'll see that they both have Negroid features. These are women in these on this page that I'm bringing up over here. This is Queen Ty right here. If you've ever seen this picture in color, they still have this in some European museum or something like that. This is a smaller version. There's one where the eye is missing, I think, in the European thing. They both made out of the eyes made out of obsidian, and that's why I remember it, because my son and I were gifted rings by his grandmother, and both of them had we were gifted obsidian rings. And so I was teaching him that they had the obsidian eyes were made out of what he was wearing. We had a rainbow obsidian, so it was slightly different. But nevertheless, I was trying to show him when he was looking at this, learned about this. But this is this is a queen over here. You see the nose, lips, stuff like that. You see over here, you can even see a little bit of the head shape depending on the tribe. But also you can see over here some similarities, right? Even with they try to get you to see when they explain it up here, they try to get you to see like the head stuff right here is similar to the head stuff over here. I feel like that's a little bit of a stretch, but you can see a little bit of culture in that. What I was saying, telling them on TikTok, you kind of see the stretch over here. Or they say like the head gear is similar. I feel like there's a little stretch, but you can see the similarities in the faces, right? Even, by the way, this top picture I have my hand over, sorry. You'll see an African woman in pre-Columbian Mexico. So what is this? An African woman. He's making sure to tell her African because he wants you to know that she's considered to be black, even though she was born in Mexico, right? So you'll see an African woman in pre-Columbian Mexico. Now compare her to a modern Nigerian woman, okay? You see that? You see any similarities? Right? You see that picture, those two pictures up top? You see any similarities? We haven't been shown it. These are pieces that are missing. But yeah, there's a lot. Matter of fact, you know what? I thought we were done. Holy Spirit, have your way. I thought we were done. We just gonna go. There's a couple things that I know I was supposed to show you guys, and it would be wrong of me to not show you. Okay. Hold on one second. Yep, we do need to come together as one. So we need to. These are things to help us to verify that we are coming together as one. Most definitely, we should. Yeah, you said that the Viola Davis or Viola is Viola or Viola, whichever one. Viola Davis movie coming out, very masculine and stuff like that. Said Columbus would have died the first winter without the natives having pity on him. Sure, we know that. They were pushing P way back then. Yeah, medicinally. Yeah, it could have been medicinally. I'm just saying, they were using the coca plant, and they got to get it from a particular place. How you doing, Brittany? Thanks for being part of the community. Sorry if I'm missing your comments. I'm trying my best to keep up with them. When I scroll, it's making me scroll past a lot of them, so forgive me. Oh, from Babylon to Timbuktu. We could possibly do that one day, sure. Oh, thank you, Cooper. I appreciate that. You said there's a whole African Mexican race in southern Mexico. They practice African traditions. Yeah, matter of fact, what is it? There are well, even if we use the term African American and African Mexican, we don't think about that, but Afro American and Afro Mexican or whatever, you'll discover that there are by number, not by percentage. And think about that, because there's 300. So think about this: there's 320 million Americans, something like that. And so 15%. I'm gonna make it 300 million because it's easier for my brain mathematically. So let's say there's 300 million people in the United States of America, supposedly, and let's say 15%. And some people tell me that's high, but let's say 15% of them, or actually, let's do 13%. 13% of them are supposed to be, yeah, 13% of them are supposed to be African American. So 13%, let's see. So 1% of 300 million is 3 million. So 3 million times 10, that's 30 million. Then add three more sets of three on that, that's 9 million. So we're dealing with what, 39 million about? All right. So I'm close enough. So let's say it's 39 million African Americans in the United States of America. Do you know that there are actually more Afro Mexicans in Mexico? And that means people who on a census will say that they are Afro Mexican. That means there's a lot more than that, because a lot of people don't want to admit to blackness, right? That one drop rule didn't just mess up our mindset, it messed up the mindset down there, right? But that means if there's 39 million of us about here, so let's just round up to 40. If there's 40 million of us here, that means there's more than 40 million down there, at least that, because there's a lot of us up here that don't admit to being black either, right? But there's at least 40 million of us here. There's at least more than 40 million people in Mexico that are black. That's wild, right? But it's not. But we haven't been taught that, right? We don't even think about it as being that. You said, how often do you come on? Thanks so much. Thank you very much. We come on every rising at 8 a.m. Eastern New York time. We come on and that's just on TikTok. We do other things outside of TikTok and YouTube and live sessions. We have classes, we have Bible studies, we have all types of stuff, but we try to be holistic. We have men's meetings, women's meetings, prayer. We have times that I take a day off, like I take Wednesdays off, but we're on every rising at 8 a.m. Eastern New York time. We're on every weeknight at 8 p.m. Eastern New York time, minus Wednesdays. Matter of fact, today we have our Hebrew Holy Day. We have the Feast of Trumpets, so we'll be doing that today. Brazil got the highest amount of slaves brought west African coast. Yep, most definitely. And a lot of American slaves ended up going down Brazil when the Confederacy finally lost. That's why they still have Confederate flags down in Brazil. They just finally this year or something like that tried to say that they want it to be illegal to carry a Confederate flag, but they have ceremonies every year in Brazil, once a year at least, to where they come together. They have a big Confederate flag because a lot of Confederates, they left, they took their slaves with them, went down to Brazil and kept on going because Brazil still was like, yo, slave trade is on and popping over here. You know, what you said? You said you asked folks, are they protesting against the government for poisoning the air, water, and vax? Oh, I missed the first part, I think. Sister Benita, I'm sorry. You said you asked them that? What did they say? Yeah, people have stolen a lot from other cultures, things like that. Mexico doesn't. Yeah, I saw. You know what? I'm trying to think. That's why I was struggling at the beginning, Sister Barbara. I'm trying to think. There's like some video out there. I think it's a news program, so they were honest about it on the news, even where it was like, And I think 60 Minutes might have done something to somebody else, but there was something where it's talking about, like in Mexico, there are like little children that are black and they don't really get accepted or whatever, and they have a problem with them or whatever. And a lot of, some of the mothers started taking pity upon them or whatever, basically, and taking care of them, at least making sure they eat. Um, so I know a little bit about, I don't know, I can't remember exactly, but I do remember seeing something about that. Oh, okay, that's what you're talking about, Sister Benita. You said a group of critics are trying to protest the women king because of their role in slavery, but you were like, are they against the vax and this and that or whatever? Yeah, I mean, I haven't seen it. I'm not really trying to say, because they're not really going to give an accurate depiction. And I don't want them, like, here's one of the weird things that happens is when we talk about female warriors, we try to do like a Greco-Roman thing. We try to make them masculine, like it's hyper masculine. Like these sisters are strong warriors, but they're still divine. They're still feminine. And I think, like, even to be like, we're gonna call it the woman king. If in our culture, if you even had a woman that would call herself a king, she would usually do so because there was somebody who was trying to deny her right as a woman. But once she became in her authority, everybody knew, like, if she called, like if a pharaoh would say, I'm a king, she would do it so that nobody would try to come against her. But then at the end of the day, she would stop it, right? Like, or like Queen Ty kind of did something like that where she became very masculine for a second at a couple meetings, because the Eurocentric people that were trying to take over her land and her people's lands, they weren't going to respond to her femininity. But as soon as she did that, she went right back to being that. Matter of fact, she even took on Christian values towards the end just to stop some of the beef, and she was became even super effeminate at the end to be able to be like, hey, see, even though y'all know I could tear y'all up in a second, I'll go ahead and play nice and I'll put on these dresses and things like that. So a lot of that stuff is there even to come against things. I'm sorry, Brother Nine, you said Western science teaches the world is static. They don't teach in a holistic and dynamic way. Yeah. Yeah. Because if you did, you'd have to recognize other cultures. You'd have to recognize other cultures. You know, and in Belize as well. Yeah, so it's a lot of stuff that goes on like that. But I would be remiss if I didn't show you guys this. So let me go ahead and we'll get ready to take our leave because we got to get ready to get everything together for our coming together. So I'm gonna just show a couple more pictures, and we'll take our leave for the day. And we'll be back on tomorrow, 8 a.m. Eastern New York time. For those that want to join us for the workout at 6 a.m. on Zoom, feel free to do that. For those of y'all that are going to be on later today at 2 p.m. Eastern New York time on Zoom, be there. For those of you who want to be for early riser Bible study session at 6:30 a.m. Eastern New York time tomorrow on Zoom. And those who come back once again for the 8 a.m. Eastern New York time live, feel free to come on, right? All right, so let's do this. Plate 7, descendants of black governors. What does it say? I want y'all to catch this part now, right? We're going to take our leave, so I don't know if I'm going to hit any too many more comments or things like that, so forgive me if I miss them. I see you, Vincent, you're absolutely right. It chops and screws information. That's a great way of saying it, right? The chop screw stuff. Watch this. Plate 7. Descendants of black governors of Ecuador. What is this descendants of? Descendants of black governors of Ecuador, Zombo chieftains from Esmeraldas, which is what? Present day Ecuador. So this is where, see how we're spreading around? This is not just one place. This is not just islands. This is not just where the Aztecs were. This is not just where parts where the Incas were. No, we spread it. We see this is all over, okay? We didn't even really do Brazil that much today. Brazil is like the ace in the hole. Like you do Brazil, it's all over, right? Maybe we'll do that tomorrow. You start talking about Brazil, you all over, right? It's all over. But let's go. Zambo chieftains from Esmeraldas in present day Ecuador who visited Quito in 1599. So they came over when? In 1599, okay? Or does it mean they came over, rather? They visited Quito, in 1599. They are shown here in Spanish dress and Indian ornaments. But watch this, because if you get confused, you'll think, oh, so they must have came over from Africa after Christopher Columbus, because it's 1599, right? But no, they are shown here in Spanish dress, which means that they've been influenced by Spain. Now at this point, they've traded with them, right? And these are people who are governors, so they're making sure that they're governing over people and making sure people look up to them the same way they do the Spanish. But what are they doing? They're in Spanish dress and Indian ornaments, which really are what? Native American, right? Because when I say American, you can talk about South or North American. So Native American ornaments, but we're descendants of a group of 17 shipwrecked Africans. of 17 shipwrecked Africans who gained political control of an entire province of Ecuador in short order. So what does that mean? That means that there were people who came over from Africa on a ship. 17 of them survived. And these people I'm about to show you are the descendants of those 17 people who survived. All right. All right. So here we go. All right. Here we go. This is what this is what they look like. You see that? 17 African shipwreck ships. I'm sorry. Shipwreck ships, 17 African people left over. And out of them, here's some of their descendants who became rulers or governors over a province. And if you get this book, he says, if you want to know more about it, you got to go back to chapter 2. Right? I don't have time for that right now. Okay, we got to get ready to take our leave. Right? But here you go. African governors, even during when the slave trade has started, they still got so much respect in their area that they're governing the whole province. And they're the descendants of people who were shipwrecked there. Right? So if they're the descendants, that means that people have been there for a minute. So African ships came over, hence why you had these people, the descendants of shipwrecks. All right. Now, remember I was telling you about Mali and stuff like that? Okay. Medieval Mali at the time of Abukari II, it dwarfed the Holy Roman Empire. It what? It dwarfed the Holy Roman Empire. Wait a minute. We were told the Holy Roman Empire, huge, this, that, nothing like it, blah, blah. What I'm about to show you dwarfs it. Now, remember, your idea of Europe is that Europe is several times bigger than what it's supposed to be, right? Your idea of, like, you can get on you can get on a train and go through Europe and hit several countries in a matter of hours, right? On a train. You can't do that with states here, but you can do that with countries over there. So we think of Europe, and remember, several, maybe 10 plus Americas, something like that. United States of America can fit into Africa, because Africa is 2.5 times bigger than what you're used to seeing on a map, right? So when I'm saying some of this stuff, I'm about to show you something, right? To where what? I want to show you how, when I'm about to show you this, I'm about to show you the size of this. You got to think of this as being bigger. This dwarfs the Holy Roman Empire. So you think the Holy Roman Empire being something bigger than what it was. This dwarfed it. This is Abukari II. Okay? Mansa Musa's people. All right? This is what he looked like. This is the size of what they had. And you think that they get, as somebody said earlier, you think they got to a land that size and didn't know how to sail? You think they had that much gold and didn't know how to sail? This is what they look like. Abukari II. You think that they had that much land and couldn't sail anywhere? They had that many rivers that they were trading off of, couldn't sail anywhere. You see what I'm saying? Like, we were told something that doesn't make sense when you start looking at it. Matter of fact, if you look at the page right next to it, you'll see that worldwide winds and currents that Christopher Columbus learned how to sail off of from Africans. These worldwide winds and currents, it emphasizes the Atlantic drift routes from Africa to America. This is stuff that we knew about before Columbus. Anybody telling you that we had to have Christopher Columbus show us these things is a lie. We knew how to get all around the world. Don't forget, Black people have gone as high as Greenland and stuff. Black people have been to Canada. Black people have been to Hawaii. Black people have been to all these places. This is not anything new. It's only new to us because it wasn't given to us. It wasn't taught. Right? You see clearly that you can come, if you wanted to, from West Africa and make your way down easily. Like, you could follow the current and end up coming on down, down here to South America. I mean, you can see this pretty easily. You can see how they did. Eventually, they did what? It was a triangle, right? You had a triangle. Boom. Oh, sorry. I'm trying to look at it backwards on TikTok. It's messing with me. But it's like boom. They were up. over to Europe, right? And then you came back down. Triangular slave trade based off of the currents. You think that they didn't know that already? Don't forget that if you go into the middle of what's known as the United States of America, and this United States of America is way too big, and then South America is way too small, by the way, which means that you would actually have probably closer to each other. If not closer, you would at least have it to be bigger, which means you have to go past South America to be able to do the slave trade thing. That's why they had to often drop people off at Haiti, right? Haiti over in this area, right? Haiti, that's why Haiti got so many different slaves. Haiti was a hub. It was right in the center of everything, but you had to go past South America to do it. But in the middle of America, as I was saying earlier, you got pyramids in the middle of America. How you get pyramids in the middle of America? How are there pyramids from all the way up here, and some even in Canada, right? But we definitely have pyramids for sure, without anybody being able to dispute it, in Illinois, in Indiana. You got them going all the way down here, even in a triangle pattern, and you got them going all the way over here in a triangular pattern. The same triangular pattern that they sail in. Somebody got to tell me at some point, like I said, the evidence becomes overwhelming. Either you just aren't going to see it because you don't have ears to hear or eyes to see, or you just straight up will not allow yourself to say that my people are cultured enough to be able to sail. Right? That lie that black people can't swim. Black people stopped swimming when white people wouldn't allow them in pools. Some of the beaches and stuff that I take my son to, that we enjoy, that we have full authority and power to be inside of and swim and have a great time, are beaches that they wouldn't have allowed his grandparents, let alone his great grandparents, to swim in. But they'll have you believe that you can't swim. Well, they taught a whole bunch of you weren't supposed to swim, and if you tried to, they killed you. So why would you try to learn to swim? Swimming, not learning how to swim, was a way of preserving yourself, not just against the water, but against the people who would kill you if you got in the water. Pieces. They don't tell you, right? How about this? East African trading ship, a ship of great antiquity. It sailed the Indian Ocean between Africa and China, between where Africa and China, held together not by nails, but by palm fiber lashings. These ships could be as large as 70 tons. Wait a minute. So you can build a 70-ton ship, but you can't come over to the Americas? They could be as large as 70 tons. The one shown here is from a model in the Fort Jesus Museum at Mombasa, which means that they lied about your culture and they made you slaves, and then they took everything that you had and then they put it in a thing, and then they sprinkled some Jesus on it. Y'all know how I said it all the time. They literally sprinkled some Jesus on it. The one shown here is a model in the Fort Jesus Museum at Mombasa. The Swahili transshipped an elephant to China in the 13th century. They took an African elephant and brought it to China in the 13th century. And then the lower one we're going to read, actually, I'm going to just read all of them together, right? The lower one we're going to see on that page is African Power Canoe. Now, this is an artist rendering, right? But it's an African Power Canoe. The type boat encountered on the Gambia by Portuguese explorer Alves da Cadamosto in 1455. That's before Columbus. Similar boat with 48-man crew developed on the Orinoco by South American Indians circa 120. So you can find this in Africa, and you can find this boat over in South America. On this day, sailed from Venezuela to Puerto Rico in one day. Venezuela to Puerto Rico in one day. Un día. Or ina un día, right? I think I said it right. We'll just say una dia. How about that? Right. Average speed was 8 knots an hour in storm-free seasons. This speed was sustainable night and day since oarsmen worked in shifts, 24 resting, 24 rowing. Note waterproof awning for provisions. See Desmond versus Nicholson, pre-Columbian, Desmond versus Nicholson, pre-Columbian seafaring capabilities in the Lesser and Antigua Archaeological Society, written in July 1975. And in the last picture, I'm going to show you guys, and then we're going to go, the second to last picture, there's one more I got to show, and then we're done. It's Heyadalis Ra, the first, built by African boatmen right? And you'll be able to actually see this one. This is the one you can see the physical thing still together at the time. African boatmen from Lake Chad built this papyrus boat. What was it built out of? Papyrus. Papyrus boat along the pattern of the ancient Kemetics. It left North Africa in 1969 and sailed as far as Barbados. So this means that just like they'll have Polynesian people who will build a boat based off of what their Polynesian people did to get over to places like Hawaii and over to Fuji and places like that, right? These people, and they'll build all based off of old models. Some African people got together and looked at what Kemet used to do and what they wrote out on Egyptian coasts or in hieroglyphics and stuff. They wrote it out and they decided to put a boat together and see if it would sail. And they did this in 1969. They never told you this. In 1969, this is many of you guys' lifetime. If it's not your lifetime, it's definitely your parents' lifetime. If it's not theirs, it's definitely your grandparents' lifetime if you're listening to me, right? And so in 1969, this is the year after Martin Luther King Jr. was shot. I know they tried to tell you that was a long time ago because it was, what, 50 years ago or so, right? But 50 years ago and as long as you think, right? What, 79, 89, 99, 2009, 2019. Yeah, so 53 years ago. 53 years ago, they did this. They went off of the old Kemetic a way of building ships. They built it exactly the way they would have built it back then. They didn't use any extra materials. That's how you're supposed to do it if you do this type of project. It says the rudders broke early on the Ra, right, proving that an ancient drift journey in such a boat using African to American currents was feasible. So they actually put a rudder on it the way that they had, but the way that they did it, they broke the rudder, probably because they don't know how to build it exactly the way they used to. But even though the rudder broke, they still made it based off of just being able to what? To coast, right? So these are these three ships we were talking about, right? You had this first one. I'm going to show it to you guys on TikTok in a second. You got this East African trading ship, okay, that went and took an elephant, right? Swahili people put an elephant on it to take it from Africa over to China. How many tons can an African elephant weigh? Matter of fact, let's look at, because the ship could be up to 70 tons, but I want to know. That's in me right now. I want to know how many tons does an African, because it's not a Chinese elephant, it's an African elephant. They're bigger than an African elephant weigh. So an African elephant can be in between 2 to 7 tons. If you're not aware of how much a ton is 2,000 pounds. So if an elephant can weigh 7 tons, that's 2 times 14. That's 14,000 pounds. They had an elephant, 14,000 pounds, and took it on a trip. And yet they want you to believe that they can't put weight on a ship to be able to take these currents that we've seen today out of the Library of Alexandria and stuff, where people know how to be able to sail. They knew about this, went to Kemet for the information. They didn't even go to West Africa, which we're talking about Mali, how they did it. They went to West Africa, ancient technology, to be able to see how they could go ahead and get into the slave trade. That's what they literally did in the 16th century. What was it? What did they say? 1513, something like that. But they're telling you and I there's no way that they could travel like that. Come on. Something don't make sense. Right. But here's that top one. I'm sorry, TikTok, I'm coming. This bottom one was a handwritten one. That's the one, or a hand-drawn one. That's the one that they said that they found them in South America and in Africa, at both places as late as or as early rather as 1455. That's before Columbus. And they were able to take this type of ship, and they were able to do a journey back then where they were able to go from, what did they say? They were able to go from, they landed in Puerto Rico and they left Venezuela, right? I believe. What was it? Yeah, they left Venezuela and they went to Puerto Rico in one day, which means that they had to average 8 knots. And they did it basically only by rowing, right? They had 24 people that would row. They had 48 people at least. 24 would row, 24 would take a break, then they would switch and take turns. And then you have this boat over here. This is the one that they built based off of what Kemetic people did. They did it the same way. And even when the rudder broke, they were able to get, over from, what was it that they did? They went from North Africa. They left North Africa and they went as far as Barbados. All right, or Barbados. Right? This is the one up here on TikTok. This is the one we were talking about up here, where this was 70 tons. These ships could weigh as much as 70 tons, and they had a 7-ton elephant. That's besides other human beings and other things they might have brought too, but they brought at least a 7-ton elephant. When people say we didn't have the technology, right? This is the one on the bottom that they found as early as 1455, not only in Africa, but also in South America. And they know that they could take this ship to be able to go from Venezuela all the way up to Puerto Rico. And then finally here, you have the one that was made in 1969 based off of what the Kemetic people said, how you're supposed to build a ship. They built it the same way that they did. And even though their rudder broke, they were still able to go all the way from North Africa, all the way to Barbados or Barbados. Think about that. But they tell you and I that we can't. There's no way we could have sailed. There's no way we could have been here. There's no way we could have traded. There's no way that Christopher Columbus would have learned about how to get here through us and from us and this and that, even though his journal says so and his child's journal says so. And we know that it had to be a black person that was a black Israelite, by the way, who people are mad at black Hebrew Israelites, which we don't call ourselves, but the government does, to make sure that they blacklist us as enemies to the state. But there's proof, there's evidence that this stuff can be here. Right? Last piece of evidence. I'm done. I promise I'm done. We got to take our leave and get ready so we can be ready by 2. All right. And it's a feast of trumpets. So just in case you want to be eating today, we're going to make sure that you can be in place and all that great stuff to be able to eat and enjoy as we go through the celebration. Right? Now, I'm going to just read this. Some of you, because you know the difference, you know that really when they try to say Semitic, they got to really be talking about Shemitic, and we know who Shem is. Right? So I'm just going to read this, and y'all do with it what y'all will. You ready? It says this. It says that on one side of this is going to be the boat on head of a Shemitic figure from, and I don't know how to pronounce it. I think it's a stele, but like it'd be stele, I'm not sure. Stele in Campeche. Compare with Phoenician ships. Who are Phoenician people, by the way? Canaanites mixed with Israelites mixed with all these people, etc. Oh, wow. Thanks, man. Huh? Oh, okay. Thanks. So all these things, right? You see? So boat on the head, Semitic figure from a stele in Campeche. Now you're going to compare this with a Phoenician ship and the late Kemetic or late dynastic Kemetic period. So at the end of the Kemetic dynasty, you had Israelites, you had Kemetic people who had the same type of technology using it, and you're going to see the same type of ship on the head of this Semitic or Shemitic figure that's not over in Africa, but is over here in the Americas. Same people that they told Christopher Columbus this. They told him this. Right? Here you go, YouTube. Right? I don't know how well you can see the picture on the right. It's pretty gray. But the ship is on the head of this person. Right? If you compare the way the ship is and the look of it, compare the look of the ships that the Phoenicians used. And we know, by the way, these are not just things we can confirm on the Phoenician side. We know that the Romans, they actually learned how to build their ships because what happened in during the one of the Punic Wars, because the Punic Wars was like 100 years, but it's like 3 different wars that happened over 100 years, whatever. But when you see this, you'll see that the Romans actually learned how to build ships because the Carthaginians accidentally had a ship that came into their territory and was unmanned. And they took the ship, they reverse engineered it. They broke it down and then put, just like you'll see in books today and stuff, and European people were like, hey, you got to make sure you put letter A goes here and letter number 1 does it, blah, blah. They reverse engineered it. And then they built the whole fleet of them. And they still lost in the beginning, but they got better and better at building ships because they got this design. But this design, the ship is the same thing that's on the head. And they admit to you that this person is Shemitic or Semitic. How do you have a Shemitic person if there's no mixing and matching? Like, they'll admit to you that this person is Shemitic, even with all this stuff. They'll say that, hey, this person would have been thought of as Shemitic, even over here. Not Seminole, right? Shemitic, Semitic, different thing, right? Same thing, ship on the head, ship shaped similarly. Right? And last thing I'm going to say, I don't even know if I can find it. So many pictures in this, even though this is a lot less pictures than what I thought it had initially. There's a picture of a head. I don't know if I'm gonna be able to show it to you guys or not, but I'm going to show you that even these people had an idea that Yahshua, or who people call Jesus, even though it was not the same Yahshua that we worship, but it was a Yahshua that people introduced to them through the trading, especially when Europeans started doing the trading. There's a Yahshua, there's a depiction of Jesus that's over in the Americas before Christianity hit. And then when Christianity hit, they changed up what his position was, and they just made him one of their many different deities or spirits over there. Ah, I know it's here. I know I saw it yesterday when I was going through. I wanted to make sure that I knew exactly which one to tell you guys was it. Oh wow. Holy Spirit, please help me. I really want to show you all this, because this will really make it clear for you that even people that didn't worship him as their Lord and Savior were like, at least he's one of our, it said, at least he's one of our spirits. They themselves made sure that they depicted him, and they didn't depict him as white, which means that somebody, whether European or African, had to tell them, yeah, this dude, he's, we don't believe him to be white. Wow. I can't just make a claim like that and leave y'all hanging. Come on, Kofi. Holy Spirit, help this Kofi in his weakness right now. Allow me to be precious in thy sight. I can't believe it. Now, wait a minute. I think it's one of these. Okay, here we go. All right. So these are black spirits, or gods, some people would call them, in medieval Mexico, or not medieval, really, because that's their word for it. But in Olmec She, when we were Olmec She, and the trader Anachem, Ekchua is A, right? Or the trader god is Ekchua. Okay. Many Indians of Central and South America and Mexico journey annually, even today, to what A. Hyatt Verrill of the Museum of the American Indian labels a shrine or Mecca in an obscure Guatemalan village. There they worship the Black Christ. There they worship the what? There they worship the Black Christ, whom they refer to in private as Ekchua, god of the merchants, husbandmen, and travelers. The god of what? Jewelers is going to be Nauapalai, gold pictorial of Negroid god in the National Museum of Mexico City. All right. So these are black gods. You're about to see black gods or black spirits, etc. Right. But this one in A, which you're going to see different versions of it, they are supposed to be black colored, and they're supposed to be Negroid. They're supposed to be considered to be African. Right? The people there still to this day, they worship a Black Christ that was introduced to them, but in private, they still call him what they used to call him, because remember, in Christianity, see, people don't get it. Roman Catholicism, you can have, like, people think that Miriam is the Madonna, right? Like there's a Madonna in Christ child. But do you know, like, I don't know if you've ever done this. If you get a chance and you come to Washington, D.C., it's kind of an obscure place to go. But if you go over to the what is it called? The Basilica. It's like the National Basilica, or the National something of Jesus Christ, the Basilica, something like that. I can't remember the name of it right now. But let me Google it real quick, because I want you guys to be able to reference this stuff. I've been there before. I even had like a whole long like family video of us visiting it, and I was supposed to make a shorter version for you guys before they took down the last YouTube channel. I might still have enough to do another video. Let me see. National Basilica. Okay, yeah, it's called the Basilica of the National Shrine of the Immaculate Conception. It's called the Basilica of the National Shrine of the Immaculate Conception. Once again, it is called the Basilica of the National Shrine of the Immaculate Conception. If you ever get a chance to go there, they just finished building it. They took them 100+ years to build and finish and complete. So they finally completed it. And when you go there, you will see that in all these different countries, they have different Madonnas and Christ child. So a lot of people think that like Mary and Christ is it, but a lot of people have Marys. There's a lot of different Marys. Like, some people en français, in French, some of them don't tell us about Mary, tell us about Joan of Arc, right? If you go to certain, like in the Philippines, they have a different Mary, right? Saint Mary, like everybody has different people that they get to worship. And the Pope allows it and allows the people to basically, or the priesthood that's there to vote on behalf of the people for whoever their people will be. So when you go there, there's a place for darn near every country out there to be represented. And you'll see that, yeah, everybody's got a different Mary. So what happened is you had Christianity that made its way over. They had heard about Christ. They knew he was black from African people that were coming over who actually worshiped the black Christ. There was no problem with the form, but they were like, yeah, but that's not necessarily our thing. Some of y'all coming over here are Israelite, blah, blah, but that's not our thing. And hey, look, to each their own. You do what you do, whatever. We don't have to mix, but at the same, as far as the belief system, we can make the main thing the main thing. You have Roman Catholicism now, doctrine of discovery. Christianity comes over and says, we're going to take over. But what do? Okay, to make sure the people get in line, we mix and match gods. We believe in gods, not Elohim. We believe in gods. We believe in deities. We believe in deists. We don't believe in Elohim. We believe in gods, right? These multiple gods. You can do whatever you want, mix and match, put whoever, wherever you want them to be. So what do? They say, okay, we're going to give you this black Jesus, right? We're going to give you this black Jesus. Or this person that you already have, right? You call him Ekchua. We want you to worship Jesus. Well, your Jesus, your Christ child, right. So you can have your Saint Mary, whoever that is, and then your Christ child can be whoever you want. Who you want it to be, they called him Ekchua, who they already worshiped before. They knew about a black Christ. The Roman Catholics come in and say, okay, you can keep him, but it's got to be about Christ. And so what does it say even to this day, at the time when this book was written, right, which is what? Forgive me. Oh, this isn't the original. But regardless, like, I don't know, when was this book written? 70s, 80s, somewhere in there. But it says still to this day, right? It makes it a point to tell you, still to this day, what? Still to this day, right? People go, Native Americans of Central and South America and Mexico journey annually, even today, to what Ahai Varil or Veril of the Museum of the American Indian labels a shrine or Mecca in an obscure Guatemalan village. So they go to Guatemala. There they worship the Black Christ, right? In public, they worship the Black Christ, but whom they refer to in private as Ekchua, God of merchants, husbandmen, and travelers. In other words, they always were worshiping somebody that was black, period. Somebody said they have to turn him into Jesus in order to worship him still. So they said, okay, we'll worship him like Jesus, but we'll still give love to the same God we have. And in public, we'll say he's the black Jesus. But in reality, he's what? He's Ekchua. And this is what Ekchua looked like. This bottom one is another Negroid god or deity or spirit, etc. But he's not supposed to be. He's Negroid, but he's not supposed to be the Christ. But all this up here, these are just different versions. These are just different depictions of Ekchua. And now this same Ekchua that they worship, they just worship him underneath the Christian title of Jesus Christ. Y'all see that right there? That's what he was supposed to look like, Ekchua. And then they said, you got to worship Christ. And they said, okay, we'll make a deal with you like they did all these different holidays and stuff. We'll make a deal. We'll mix and match all these things together. You just call him Jesus. This down here is the other Negro God we had talked about. But this, all these up here are different depictions of Ekchua, or of the Black Jesus Christ. That people from Mexico, Central America, all the places, they go to Guatemala and they worship this Black Christ, but in private, they still call him Ekchua because that's who he was to them. That's who he still is to them. You see what I'm saying? Like, so this stuff is there. Well, the Pope honor that all the time. It's like when people do Lent today. Lent comes from Lupercalia. Lupercalia is when you had, people had mad sex, and you did it for a 40-day period or so. The Pope didn't like it. He said, "Hey, y'all gonna have to do something, and maybe y'all can stop having sex as much, but y'all can have y'all one day to be able to wild out." Lupercalia was about acting like wolves, like being romantic. Romulus and Remus supposed to be the children of wolves or raised by wolves, whichever story you want to believe. And then Romulus kills Remus, right? Wolf-like behavior, even though that's not how wolves get down, but whatever, wolf-like behavior. So that's what that's what they wanted to subscribe to. So that's just been something that's been there. It's romanticized. It's romantic, to where they did that. So the Pope comes by, he's the Holy Roman Empire. He's like, we can't be having y'all doing all this. They're like, well, we ain't gonna give up what we're doing. He's got to rule over them, but he's got to allow them to do what they want. But at the same time, got to allow them to get down what he's doing. He says, okay, y'all can go ahead and have your little ceremony, but let's see if you can just do it in one day. See, in Europe, they call it what it is, basically, like Lupercalia. Sometimes in India, they call it something different because they were influenced by this. In America, you would call this Fat Tuesday, right? Right. In Brazil, you would call it Carnival. It's the same day, right? It's the same thing. Like, that's the thing you're supposed to do when you take over people. You tell them that they have to worship Jesus or whatever, but Jesus can be whatever. You just sprinkle some Jesus on them. That's why you still into Christmas. Christmas is Saturnalia. Saturnalia is there to be able to make sure that you appease the bad god. Even in some places they're doing Odin. That's why he's in the sleigh, because Odin rode around in air, and that's why you go inside with your tree. And you're supposed to be. You're right. You better not. What is it? You better not shout. Or you better not pout. You better not something. I'm telling you why. Santa Claus is coming to town. That's why Futurama, Santa Claus is a bad guy. It's the same romanticized story. It's the same cultish. I don't even care about using the word cultish, but it's the same type of thing that's going on as far as paganism, or as far as jinns or gentile type stuff, or druid type stuff, mixed up with Halloween. It's the same thing. It's the same thing. They've been talking the same thing. Anyways, though, thank y'all for being on. I appreciate you. Somebody talked about something they wanted to go over, and I said maybe we do it tomorrow. I know what we're doing for the early riser session. Well, it'll come to me if it's necessary. But thank y'all for being on. We appreciate you. We got to go ahead and get into get ready for our Hebrew Holy Day today, Feast of Trumpets. So we're excited to see you guys later on. Those who are partaking in it, I'm gonna try and make sure that I send you a little rundown so you'll know where we're gonna be at today and what we're doing at what points. We thank you so much. You said you assumed that Jesus was black but got kicked out of church for being contrary. Yeah, a lot of people have. A lot of people have, right? But thank y'all for being on. We're on every day, 8 a.m. Eastern New York time. We're on every weeknight at 8 p.m. Eastern New York time, except for like Wednesdays. Wednesdays is my day off, but still on Wednesdays we have a conference call line that we have teaching on. We're going to fix that conference call stuff, by the way, too. We'll get that info out to you. But as far as today, we'll see you at 2 o'clock p.m. Eastern New York time. If you're on Zoom, if you don't have the information for Zoom, get in touch with us, DM us, do whatever you need to. I try my best to look through the stuff. Once it gets to be about 1:30, 1:45, I'm probably not going to have time to look to see if you needed it, this and that. So if you didn't get it, if you didn't check your spam to see if it didn't get moved to spam or something, please, man, please, sir, let us know if you'd like to partake. We have a couple ministers who are going to be on taking care of things. I'm really not going to be doing much of anything except enjoying like you guys, and we're going to have a feast together and come together as a community as we should. And thank you guys again. We won't take too much of your time with the ceremony, by the way. So stuff that you guys have to do. I promise it won't take but so much time. The most I can see it going is going to start at 2. The longest I could probably see it going is 3:30, 4 o'clock. So if you'd like to be able to join us, hear a little bit more, get a little bit more of this stuff together, and really start embodying some of these things that we talk about, we'd love to be able to talk to you later. So thank you again. We appreciate you. Please check out my wife, the Honorable Alma, on TikTok, YouTube, her website, and Pinterest at Bloom and Flourish. Not A&D, the letter N, Bloom and Flourish. She's a healer, herbalist, chemist, and biologist by degree. You can also email her at bloomandflourish1@gmail.com. And don't forget the tincture of the month. She has many different tinctures. The tincture of this month is I Am Rested. So we appreciate you. We thank you. We honor you. We honor the King and Queen of each and every one of you. And we look forward to talking to you guys very soon. And by the way, those who don't know, we do our rising sessions, 8 a.m. Eastern New York time. That's on TikTok on Kofi_43. When we do our sunset sessions or our evening sessions, that's on Kofi_42 on TikTok. All right. And thank you all so much again. Appreciate you. We look forward to talking to you. And as always, it's been Pastor Kofi, Pastor Servant to Christ, where we are always changing lives one mind at a time by being the voice of the voiceless and speaking the unspoken until I have the great privilege, opportunity, and responsibility of being in front of you all again. Please remember, as always, Yashta, that you are loved, you're necessary, you're majestic, you're fearfully, wonderfully made, and you, which is all of us working together, will be the reason why people who are in the system no longer have to be of it. Shalom, family. Peace.